Hello everybody, welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today it is Sunday the 18th of May 2025. I'm CareyHolzman, and today we've got a video review for another NVMe USB4 enclosure. Now if you recall, we've already looked at two alternatives, ZikeDrive and ORICO, and we did have some issues with the cables. There were two cables included with the ZikeDrive that did not communicate properly with one computer I was testing on. Didn't have any other problems with any other computers. But that same computer didn't have any problems with the cable included with the ORICO drive. In fact, or ORICO, however it's pronounced, we were able to take the ORICO cable that was included with the ORICO drive and plug it onto the ZikeDrive and resolve those speed issues that again only happened with one computer. Now both of those enclosures more or less are meant more for temporary use, although there's no rule that says you have to do it that way, just that they're very easy to get into, and I'm not quite sure how long they would withstand hour after hour, day after day with that much heat trapped in there. Probably the ZikeDrive might do better in that way. But then I was made aware that SilverStone has their version, which looks like a solid block of metal here, that is also, I believe it's actively cooled. So we're going to check that out today. I've got a Gen 3 Samsung, it's a 970 EVO 2 terabyte. A Gen 3 drive, when installed to do the best it can do, the proper hardware can hit about 3,600 megabytes per second. When you plug this into Gen 4, USB 4, you get 40 gigabits of data transfer, which is 4 gigabytes. And in that 4 gigabytes, you have USB data transmission, communication, and data correction. The bottom line is about the fastest you can expect, peak through USB 4, when you get rid of all the overhead, is about 3,200 megabytes per second. That's the best you can hope for. So purchasing or installing a drive that goes any faster than 3,200 is kind of a waste of money. In that way, putting a Gen 4 or a Gen 5 inside of this enclosure is possible, but it wouldn't make any sense why somebody would do that, because you'll never be able to achieve speeds higher than the less expensive Gen 3. And this is assuming you've got a Gen 3 that can hit 3,200 megabytes per second. Not all Gen 3s will. So this is a Samsung. It's one of the fastest Gen 3s made. And we're not using it anymore, so I thought we'll use it here to test this enclosure and see if we can get 3,200, or if not, how close we can get to that. We'll put some links to the other reviews for the ZikeDrive and the ORICO enclosure if you just want some ideas for comparison in pricing as well as design. Some of its aesthetic. The Zike is really designed to be portable and on the go. This drive here is designed to be a permanent enclosure. It screws down, locking the drive in. Although the drive itself installation is toolless, which, make up your mind, SilverStone, what are we doing? So once you get the lid off, that requires a screwdriver. You can pop the drive in with no tools. So it is a sort of a toolless design. The reviews on those look fantastic, but what you need to know is that they make a couple different versions of this. So let's go over to the Amazon page right quick, and let me introduce you to the product. Now, you're looking at about $125 for this drive, and it is USB 4, and it has an active cooling fan. This is as fast as you can go externally right now, and you'll need a drive that's fast enough. The enclosed cable is what you're going to need to use. If you just swap it out with a cable you've got laying around, you may not be able to hit these speeds. And you need a computer that's capable of 40 gigabits per second. Okay, so there's your 125. But if you look over here, you'll notice the price drops in half, and so do the speeds. At 20 gigs per second, you're looking more along USB 3.2 Gen 2. So if that's all you have, and you don't have, let's say, a fast Gen 3 drive, but a slower one that you just want to continue to use, or for whatever reason, you'll get approximately half of 3,200 megabytes per second. So that would be around 1,600 megabytes per second. You might be able to do a little better. It really kind of depends on the computer, but I think the 40 gigabit has a little bit more overhead. You'll see from the outside they look nearly identical, and I think it's mostly the controllers that are different. It's not going to work with a SATA drive. It's not going to work with other M.2 drives. They must be NVMe M.2s. Otherwise, you're wasting your money on this enclosure, because this is a high-end enclosure, high performance. So you put a high-performance drive in it. If you have a low-performance drive, save your money and just buy a simple dock. It'd be a lot less money. As we scroll down here and look at some of the reviews, they will be mixed. The reviews will be both for the 20 gig, which here SilverStone is showing it can hit 2,000, close to 2,100. And they're going to show you a best case scenario here. This is probably the best of all their testing, using a 960 Pro from Samsung. And if you look at reviews, you might see other people in the reviews also showing pictures of 2,000. So that's how you know which one they're reviewing. If you see numbers up around 3,200, you know they're reviewing the other unit, because you just can't tell by looking at it. And if we go back up to the top here and choose the other model and take a look at the sample speeds, I want to say 3,200, but let me just double check myself. Does it not load? Come on, get up there. There we go. So I'm seeing just over 3,000. So if you get 3,000 or better, I'd say you're good to go. But don't be surprised if you do see up to 3,200. It should, in theory, be possible. And they might have been selling themselves short based on the Kingston Fury drive they've got installed here. That might have been their issue. Or it might be the computer they're testing on. They do say it's a 12700K. This is the motherboard. So if the drive isn't capable of going that fast, then the drive is your bottleneck. If your enclosure isn't capable of going that fast, that's your bottleneck. If your cable isn't designed to go that fast, it's your cable. And then if the USB port that you're plugging into is not a USB4 40 gigabit per second port, then that's your bottleneck. So if all things align, then you can absolutely get the best performance on an external drive that's available today, and it doesn't have to break the bank. It may seem expensive compared to slower models, but just go back a few years and this will seem outrageously inexpensive and outrageously quick. So our perspectives do change as the technology becomes cheaper. And these really fast USB4 external enclosures for NVMe drives run right around that $100 price point, depending on, are they metal, are they plastic, are they made by a name brand? You know, if we come down here, we can see other units being offered that this is just USB 3.2 Gen 2, which is going to get you that 20 gig or 2,000 megabytes per second. This one, I don't even know how you compare these, because this one's twice the speed, this one's half the speed and half the price. It's also got an exposed fan. It might be loud. I don't know. It's clearly pretty large. And then over here, we've got another one from another company I've never heard of. That's $70. That says it'll do 40 gigs per second. We might need to check that one out. It seems pretty big though. And I don't like how the USB port is kind of being blocked. So you better use the cable they include or you might be in trouble. Then I see one over here, Ineo. Now this is the cheapest, right? So what do you think? Do you think the cheapest one is going to compare to the most expensive one? No, it isn't. I can tell you right now, the performance on this one isn't even going to come close. Now this also has a write protection switch on it. And this has created anything that has a write protect switch, like flash drives. Certain flash drives used to have a write protect switch. I would get calls from people going, my flash drive says it, you know, can't write to it. They didn't realize they had flipped a switch. The switch is usually quite tiny on these. So I'm not a big fan of seeing a write protect switch, but if you're a tech or you're somebody that's very technical and you're constantly aware of where that switch is and how to check it, in which case working with virus infected computers is much safer, since you don't have to worry about your tools. Let's say you put your tools and utilities and virus cleanup software on there. You don't have to worry about getting that infected. On the other hand, who cares if it's infected? If you're cleaning up a virus, you just simply clean it or wipe it and recreate your tool when you're done. So that's, again, for me, I don't get that whole thing, but this is only going to go a quarter of the speed and it's a quarter of the price. Everywhere you look in this technology, from motherboards to CPUs to storage to enclosures to networking, switches and routers, you get what you pay for. If you're looking for a bargain, you're not going to be leading in that class as far as performance, speed. Now, that's not important to everybody. For some people, they're looking at value. What's the best bang for the buck? It's never going to be the latest and greatest. So depending on where you sit on that, just know that if you're interested in the SilverStone, they do make other models for NVMe and SATA that you'll see me use the regular, what the heck was the model? MS16, I think it was what it was called. Let me go up here and just take a quick look. That's the one that doesn't have the lid on it. No, it's not an MS16. Geez, I thought it was an MS12, but maybe they've changed that design. Let's do SilverStone SSD. I'll find it. Because SilverStone, they make a bunch of PC accessories, and we don't have time to go through all of them. But back in the day, I mean, I remember buying these, the MS09s. I think I still have them around here, which were great for SATA SSDs. Really inexpensive, super easy to use them. And then this is what we're looking at today. And then you'll see competitors, right, listed here, some of which may be familiar names and others not so much. And bear that in mind, as it will reflect the price, quality, and support, generally speaking. And yeah, maybe SilverStone is not making that drive anymore. But it basically had an open top, and it enables me as a tech to simply move drives in and out of the enclosure without a lid, without screws, or without tools. And it's definitely not a permanent enclosure. It's there for tech work or temporary access. Like if I want to wipe one of my drives clean, instead of opening up a desktop computer and installing it and then wiping it and taking it back out, it's so much safer, easier, and more efficient to simply use the enclosure. But it's bugging me that I thought it was called a, hold on a second, because I want to, this is bugging me now. The design may have changed on me, because I've had these a few years, and if you've been watching the channel, you know I've been just touting how awesome they are. So they also have the RVS03, which is one we looked at prior. And, well, I don't know where I've got one in a box. I know I've got one out in the open because I use it all, not all the time, but it's one of my very popular go-to tools, where I go and I grab it, pop an NVMe or a SATA drive in, and I think it does both. Plug it in, do what I need to do, recover data, wipe the drive, and then I'm done with it. And then the tool goes back with my tools. I wouldn't want to have to get a screwdriver and unscrew anything, whether it's the computer case or the enclosure, for my use case scenario. This is more for, I want to take an NVMe drive, put it into an enclosure, and I want to use this for my backups. I'm going to leave it just as though it were purchased with the NVMe drive, only you get to pick whatever NVMe drive, speed and capacity that you want to put in there. There's no limit. This will easily take a 4 terabyte drive easily. Probably an 8 terabyte too, for that matter, as long as the lid will close. That would be your only issue if you got chips on both sides, but I think it'll probably work fine. Let me say hello to everyone joining us here in the chat room. There's Darren Gilholm saying hello, along with Tony's RC. Abed Alazarah? I'm not sure how to say your last name, no disrespect intended. It seems like there's a missing vowel. So I'm just going to say, Abed. Welcome in, Abed. Welcome into being a new member. There's your initiation. I get to poke at you a little bit, all intended for fun. And thank you for supporting the channel. John Lewis from Brazil says hello. There's Eddie Casanova, Rick Lakes and Luke Greenia, Ghostly Lurker and John Williams, Lawrence Pierre and 3D Everything, Ben Laird and Mark Baggett saying hello, Thomas Mac T with Scott saying hello. There's Doman 2000, Gil Garcia and Paul O'Brien. Welcome in, Paul. Nicholas Barlow says hello, as does Andy Wode. Andy joins us from Southern California. Charlie Purdy says hello, as does Dustin Fuller and Dan Nilsson, William Denton, Dane, and Jose Gerardo Alvarez. Oversteer says hello from London, Canada. Dane says he's got one and it works great. Oh, I have no doubt. Like I said, I have my choice of many different kinds of NVMe enclosures. And if you notice which one you see me use, that should be all the information you need to know if you have any sort of curiosity as to which I prefer. Just watch what I use here on the bench. I'm not getting paid to use it. Well, I'm getting paid to do work. And if a tool helps me get the job done more efficiently, more safely, more, well, I was going to say faster, but I guess that falls under efficient. I was going to say cheaper, but that falls under efficient. So just, I guess, efficient and safe. But those are my requirements for the job I do. I don't know if any of you do my job, but if you do, then you'll understand. If you don't, then I may not understand your specific need. That's why I provide you with information. I'm not trying to twist your arm and telling you what to buy. I just want to show you what's available, introduce you to products, and allow you to decide if it fits your needs, your budget, your expectations. Okay, so I don't want anything that I mentioned today to come out of context. We're just here to introduce a product to you from a well-respected manufacturer. Mark Creswell said the NVMe SSD just failed in my Geekom A8 Mini. I put it in a dock and Windows thinks it's uninitialized, no data available. Luckily, I backed up with a Cronus new SSD on order. Well, that SSD probably has a warranty. Whether or not it's worth sending in, I don't know. New SSDs are cheap, and it's always a good excuse to get one that's a little faster and a little bit larger in capacity. And I'm sorry to hear that it happened, but it doesn't happen very often. Most people won't see more than a couple of dead NVMe or solid-state drives in their lifetime. I think most people won't even ever see one. Mostly technical people, people who get into their computer a lot, people who take the panels off, they're going to be just opening themselves up to more user-induced issues. Not saying that that's what you did. Sometimes they just die, but the thing is it's just not happening the way it used to. And you know, go buy a lottery ticket, because the likelihood, if you're buying a unit, a PC, and you leave it alone, you don't open it up, you don't modify it, you are increasing the lifespan of that computer. The minute you go in there and you start putting it on steroids, there are almost always consequences on steroids, unless you work as a technician in your daily life and you have a ton of experience and you're ultra careful with all the right tools. Watching people do stuff at home makes me cringe all the time, because I just think they mishandle the parts, they're over tightening screws, they think they're, you know, they have all this confidence, they know what they're doing. And then, you know, a few months later, there's a problem and they just can't put two and two together that they caused it. But again, I'm not saying that's what happened to you, because some drives just fail, but it is very, very rare. I think we've seen, what, 3 NVMe drives in the entire history of this channel that have failed, and I think 2 or 3 SATA SSD, you know, 2.5-inch drives. But we've installed 400 or 500 of them by now, so that's a very, very low failure rate. And anyway, good excuse in that case. You know, you would open it up and you would upgrade it because you have to. But if you don't have to, I'll recommend against it, unless you understand that if something happens down the road, first person you should be looking at to blame is the mirror. That's my opinion in this business and what I see. A lot of people think, oh, it's so easy, you can't screw it. Oh yeah, you can. You totally can. So as long as you're prepared to accept the consequences, have at it. You know, when people order the bare bones mini PCs and such, they're mostly okay. But I think the bare bones mini PCs are more likely to fail than if you just buy it from the factory already set up, just overall. I don't have any data to back that up, but it just comes from the stories I hear from people. I usually only hear stories from the people where things have gone wrong. And then when I ask them what do they have, there's an imbalance between the number of problems in the bare bones units versus the ones that are factory sealed that are left alone. And we're talking about the general population and not anybody specific. That being said, Dan Nilsson said he had a TS16 and after 4 to 5 times it didn't work. Well, that should still be under warranty, and I would assume with a company like SilverStone, if you reached out for warranty, that they took care of you. The other thing is when you know that we have relationships with certain vendors, right? If we have their products, we might have a relationship with them. It wouldn't hurt you if you reached out to SilverStone and you said, hey, I got a bad product, and they were anything but cooperative. Then your second email should be to us. Say, hey, can you help me out with this? On the other hand, if you purchased from Amazon, because you always notice I show Amazon links, you have any issues with any product you buy from Amazon, most Amazon products, and you can read the return, like when you look at the Amazon page here, it tells you what the return is. So if your return is within 30 days, in other words, if you have a problem within 30 days, Amazon will take it back, no questions asked, no expense paid, and you can get an exchange or a full refund. So that's why I recommend Amazon. But again, the stories of people saying they've got one going bad, those are the only people you're going to hear from usually. The people that don't have a problem, which outnumber them by the thousands, stay quiet. So don't let the fact that a product has impacted somebody because we don't know how they handled it. We don't know how it was handled in shipping to their door. And what I can tell you is when companies manufacture products these days, they're fully quality control checked at the factory. They will not spend money to ship them from Asia to the United States or Europe just to have it sent back. It's way too much money. Way too much money would be lost. So we know it passed QC when it left the factory. We don't know how it was handled in the shipping. And we don't necessarily know if the end user was using it properly. We don't know these things. We don't make any assumptions either. What we do assume is that the company has our back regardless. So if I look over here at Amazon, and if I were to have bought this, let's say from Amazon, then you'll notice over here on the right side, it says it ships from Amazon, it's sold by Amazon. Doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't have to be sold by, as long as it ships from Amazon, or at the very least, 30-day return, refund, replacement. That's what we want to see. This item can be returned in its original condition. In other words, you have not physically damaged it. You have not returned it without a box. You've not stolen anything, but rather returning everything that you purchased, all the screws, the cables. Then you should expect no issue for getting a full refund or a replacement within 30 days. So if you get a new piece of tech and you bought it from Amazon, don't throw the box or accessories out for at least 30 days. If 1,000 of you do that, the 4 or 5 of you that need to do a return because of any damage won't have any issues. But I guarantee the 995 people who don't have a problem won't say anything, mostly, and the 4 or 5 almost universally will all speak up because they feel like they've been wronged when it's just the luck of the draw. It's sort of like, I'm not going to buy that deck of cards again because that brand always gives me a bad hand in poker. It doesn't. It has nothing to do with the brand of cards. So just bear that in mind. And I appreciate hearing your feedback, by the way, because if anybody has any experience with the products that I am introducing you to, for better or for worse, I do want to know about it. And if I see an abundance of people saying theirs went bad and theirs went bad and theirs went bad, that's going to draw my attention. But, 1 or 2 going bad here and there, that's every product all the time. So we'll find out if ours is bad because I'm about to open it up right now. So again, I appreciate your feedback. Your experience is what matters to me. And, what I'm most interested is the consensus. Are most people who buy these enjoying them? Or most people who are buying these, or even an abnormally large percentage of people having issues? And I can't determine that from one piece of feedback. But If you also have experience with this, positive or negative, or any other Silverstone product for that matter, we'd love to hear about your experience, just so we can gauge, right? Like I said, the people who have an issue are the loudest. Always, it's always been that way. So if you have one and you don't have any problems, we still want to hear from you. All right, let's get this bad boy opened up here. Let me move some stuff on the desk. Here we go. Now, as you can see, we do everything live, unscripted, and unrehearsed because that's how you live your life, right? You order something like this from Amazon, it arrives in the package. You're going to do everything I'm doing in real time, I'm assuming. I don't think you burn the package open, do you? So I want you to understand basically what to expect when the product arrives, how it comes out of the box, how we set it up. We're not speeding it up and we're not editing it because you can't do that in your life. And if we did, well, that would be an unrealistic representation of reality, which is no longer reality. That is a edited reality, which is partially fiction. So in any event, I try to keep everything transparent and real. And in that transparency, I want you to know Silverstone did send us this product for free. That being said, I would have probably bought this if I knew it existed, but I had no idea this was even available. And then when I realized that, I reached out to Silverstone and I said, listen, I'd like to introduce your product to my audience because if I've never heard of it, there's a good chance many of them never heard of it either. So let's jump over to the close-up camera right quick. Let's go here and go here. There we go. And then we'll see what's in the box together. That's a little bit of a chunker. Actually pretty lightweight. It's definitely got metal on the front and the back. I don't know. Yeah, I guess the whole thing's metal, some kind of an alloy. And then in the box, we have some thermal tape, some screws, and a screwdriver, a USB4 cable. It's relatively short, but you need to have a short cable to maintain higher speed. And then we've got some documentation and warnings. What does this warning say? It is a big warning. The aluminum exterior of the MS12-40G is capable of quickly dissipating heat generated by the installed NVMe SSD and its built-in controller. Please allow some time for it to cool down after prolonged periods of high-performance activity before touching it. So that's what's written right there in numerous languages all down each paragraph. You've got warranty terms and conditions on the back, and the warranty says 1-year warranty. So if the unit you have a problem with is beyond the 30-day Amazon return period, which is the most painless way, then you still have 12 months to reach out to Silverstone for an RMA. And like I said, if you go through that process and it's anything but smooth, you let me know and we'll help you out. We can put you in touch with the right person, but that should not be necessary. Now this is the Samsung 970 EVO Plus I've got laying around that should be wiped out. I don't want to use the enclosed screwdriver because I find those to be woefully inadequate. Let's see if this one will fit. This is my JIS. No, that's... You know what? That may not be a Phillips screw. That looks like it may be a small Torx. Okay, well, if that's the case, rather than breaking out a whole different set of tools, I think we have a very teeny tiny Torx bit on here. Let's take a look and see what they've given us. I just don't like using tools this small because they're very difficult to get any leverage on. On the other hand, that should keep you from over-tightening these screws by mistake. See, this is really hard for me to turn. If I had a bigger handle, I could use more than my finger and thumb. There it goes. So we'll take out screw number 1 right there. I don't know what size Torx that is, but it's one of the tiniest I have ever seen. Is it even Torx? It looks like it's some kind of either Torx or Allen head. I'm not sure. Come on now. They got those in there tight. Actually, it probably wouldn't feel so tight if I had a bigger handled driver. But again, this is more beneficial when tightening it so that you don't accidentally over tighten it, because that can bend your drive and it can break your drive if you. So I say sometimes there's user error involved in these, but you know, it's the manufacturer's job to make the installation almost dummy proof. But in this case, because you're screwing down the lid, if you've got a lot of thermal tape on this that's raising it up so that you have to push the lid down, if you're not exercising proper judgment, maybe due to a lack of experience, you can bend this drive by torquing down this, oh, there's a fan, by torquing down the lid too tight. So inside, there's our fan. You see it's wired up here. Be careful, those are very thin wires. And then we've got this little plug right here that should pop up, and that's going to hold our NVMe drive in place. Oh, I guess not. That's just a little rubber plug that sits in there regularly, I suppose. So let me just put that guy back where he was. It came out a lot easier than it's going in. All right, so I mean, in theory, I don't think you need to remove that. I think that's intended to stay in there. And it's got two positions, so it is intended to be able to move, to be removed and reinstalled. It's just, it's tight, so that's a good thing. You don't want it falling out. But that's for a 2242 length NVMe drive. And then, of course, we want it back in the 2280 spot here. And I think I need my more higher magnification glasses to see this. It's just a rubber plug, and it's going to have a little lip you've got to get around. And then when it seats, it should kind of give you a positive snap, or, you know, you should feel it lock into place. Unfortunately, there's no tool to do this. You just have to use your fingers and human judgment to realize that when you've got it seated all the way in. I tend to try and spin them a little bit, wiggle it and spin it. See, I've got one side in, there goes the other side. Now I'm going to take the Evo, slide that in right here, and then we'll bend that little piece of that rubber plug back. That's all you have to do. That locks it in place. Now the problem that we have, potentially, is when the seat's down and it blows air over the top of the unit. This part here, the silver chip that you see all the way at the end, that's your controller. That's usually the thing that gets really super hot. And so using one of these thermal tapes, one is thicker than the other. And you want to use the one that's the thickest, and I just want to kind of test fit that, closest to where the unit plugs in. You want to be over that controller. And then I want to just test fit this to make sure. You see how now it doesn't sit down all the way. And when I force those screws down, it's going to squish that thermal compound down. Now that may be, you know, it is squishy. However, we may be asking a lot of it. Let's try the thinner one and just see if we're going to be able to sit down okay. If it's not making any contact, then there's no point in having it, right? So if it seats without a problem, it's too thin. And if it seats and it's a little squishy, that's what you want. If it seats and it's too squishy, then you're potentially going to bend the drive. Unfortunately, I don't have any recommendations to the manufacturer on how they can make this a little more accident proof, if you want to say. It's just that drives vary in thickness depending on who makes the drive and the capacity of the drive. Like an 8 terabyte drive would be twice as thick as this drive right here. So I just put the tape on like that. I'm trying to be considerate of where that fan is going to sit because I don't necessarily want the fan on the tape. It does appear that the fan does hit the tape there. So what I will do to resolve this is just grab some scissors. And I can visually tell that the tape is a little bit too long. Again, the main part of the drive that gets hot is the controller on the side you're plugging in. So anything covering the chips is not that serious of a problem. Now, in theory, that should fit right on. Oh, interesting. I'm still not making, I don't think I'm making contact here. So there's two things. The reason they give you two of these is there's also an underside right here that we can add a thermal pad to, except that this chip, this whole NVMe circuit board has no chips on the back side. A 4 terabyte or an 8 terabyte would, and that would raise the thickness of this. So I can see the dilemma here. On the one hand, this 970 Evo probably doesn't even need this thermal pad to begin with. Also, in fact, if we just take this off, it'd probably be better suited just being placed on the lid, to be honest. That way you could open and close the lid. In theory, if you were to change the drive out and not have to, well, I suppose that could stick to the drive. I'm going to set all this aside for right now, because I think with the active cooling fan, you wouldn't need this, at least not on a Samsung. But I could be wrong. So I'm going to just do a little testing here. But I think with that fan blowing air over the top of that drive, and the top of the drive is the only thing that has chips on it, I think we'd actually be blocking the airflow with a thermal pad. On the other hand, this is a giant heat sink, and if we're not making contact with it, then it's going to run hotter just naturally, because the heat is dissipating much more slowly with air than it would when making contact with this piece. So if we needed to, we could double this up. We could take this piece here, this thermal tape, and add the other thermal tape to it to make it thicker. But I don't even necessarily think that's going to be necessary. Not all NVMe drives are created equal in that sense. And then the other thing you want to be careful of is when you've got metal screws going into a metal case, you definitely want to make sure you don't cross-thread them, because then they'll just never go in ever again. So be careful when you're installing. Be sure the screw is completely straight, which I cannot see right now. So the way I just found that hole for the screw was by simply putting a little bit of pressure downward on the screw, like this one right here is not lined up. Place it into the hole, keep it straight with a little bit of downward pressure, and then slide the lid, and you should feel it when it sinks in to the mounting hole. You should not force anything. Like I said, if you strip the screws out of the metal, there's just no repairing that. At least not unless you're really good with them. You're a machinist. And then what I want to do here is I don't want to over tighten these, because I will be opening this up again. Now, if you don't think you're ever going to open this up again, I still wouldn't over tighten these, because if for some reason your mind changes, you might struggle to get these out. And I suppose if there was one area where this drive could be improved, I would prefer to see some kind of a locking mechanism that is toolless, almost like a lunchbox where you have a latch on each side and lock it in. I think that would be a massive improvement in its design. So I'm just going to turn these until they stop. I'm not taking them any further than that. And I'm pretty sure that this lid is not making contact with that NVMe drive. But if we put a Gen 4 NVMe drive in here, we will likely get it to overheat without those pads. That's my estimation of what would happen. Now, it doesn't matter which end of the enclosed USB Type-C cable you use. We're just going to plug one in here. I've got this Minis Forum X1AI Pro because this is a monster of a machine, and I know it's capable of saturating that USB4 bus, so we can really test it, you know, to see if it really holds muster. So let's turn this on. Is that booting? Gotta hit the right power button. And then let's go to our desktop here, which should be booting right now. In fact, let me grab camera one and put it in the corner so you can watch both things. Put myself up here. Mark Liebowitz says hello from Chicago. Steve Perry said the kits come with 3 different thicknesses. I only see 2. Unless 2 of them are stuck together, which sometimes happens. I just see 2 thickness. Did I miss one out of the box? That's one, that's one. I mean, you're seeing something I don't see? Somebody knows something I don't know? That's all we got. There is no third one, guys. Okay, let's get these scissors put away before somebody gets hurt. Let me grab my keyboard and my mouse. And we need what? Crystal disk mark, right? That's how we're going to test it. So let's grab my flash drive with my utilities. We'll plug it in back here temporarily. I'll plug it in over here. And we'll grab crystal disk mark off of this bad boy. All right, let's see. Sometimes the glasses make it harder to read. Okay. SpeedDrive, PC testing software, crystal disk mark portable. I'm just grabbing it here because it's a little faster from downloading it online and then extracting it. That's all. Just trying to move this along. I don't need this anymore, so we're going to take the flash drive out. And I think we have a USB4 in the front and in the back, if I'm not mistaken. We'll plug it into the front. Well, could have got a nice positive click there. Now I don't see, do we have any lights? We do have a little blue light flashing on and off. That's good because I like to see some sign of life. Now this should be completely reset using the disk cleanup tool, disk part tool, using the cleanup command. So we should have effectively a drive in there that's never been partitioned or formatted, or at least that's what it should be in that state of like brand new. So if we go over to disk management, so I'll just right click here, disk management, hopefully it'll say, hey, I see a new drive. It does. So I just click OK. And then I go to this new drive here, this disk 1, that's 2 terabyte, new simple volume, next, 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 finish. It's formatting it, and in just a second says it's healthy. That's it. We now have a brand new installed drive D. Or if you had data on this from an older system, then you'll see that. But this is emulating a brand new drive out of the box because I always reset my drives. Let's go to Crystal Disk Mark Portable Edition. We'll start the 64-bit version up. And let's see what kind of performance numbers we get out of drive D. Start all tests. And then let me go back. Let's see. Move this over a little bit. Over here. Now we can see us both easily. Jose Lopez with a $1 super chat. Ben Laird with a £2 super chat. Thanks, you guys. The 3268, that is 3271, falls right in line with what we were seeing on the sample pictures on the product page at Amazon. That's why I tell you guys, I don't understand why some of these reviews you're watching, what you're expecting to see. When you're looking at Wi-Fi routers or you're looking at CPUs, when you're looking at NVMe drives, the manufacturers will always tell you the best it can do. So when somebody's reviewing it and they review it improperly or it's not set up optimally, they will not see those numbers. They'll see lesser numbers. But what you will never ever see, at least if they do everything correctly, are numbers bigger than that. Like not much bigger. Crystal disk mark will never be exactly the same twice every test. But you'll be in that ballpark. You're not going to see some outrageous number unless somebody did something very wrong or is not configured the software correctly. So my question is, what are you expecting to see from these reviews if the manufacturers have already made it clear what the maximum performance ability of the CPU, of the Wi-Fi, of the NVMe, they're already telling you that. They're already telling you you're not going to go any faster than this. And if a reviewer does everything correctly, they will see a very similar benchmark. They'll never see it go much faster, and more than likely they'll see it go slower because they're not professionals and they're not exactly sure what they're doing. So be aware of that when you're watching reviews. Now, if it's a manufacturer you never heard of before, and especially if they're selling on AliExpress, they might be making numbers up. But a reputable manufacturer has already measured the best performance possible, and they'd be a fool not to tell you what it's capable of, because that is just 100% truthful marketing. If we were to put this computer, this drive rather, which isn't even hot at all, if we were to put this into a computer that had a Type-C that wasn't USB4, do you think I'm going to see those numbers? Yeah. If we were to put a slower Gen 3 drive, maybe a Gen 3x2, we're going to see half of those numbers. Or even a less expensive Gen 3 drive, like those Kingstons that we see that are like in the pre-builts. They use these sort of midline Kingston drives. They're not high performance drives. They're best bang for the buck kind of deal. So when you're looking at doing the testing and you want to see those high numbers, you're not going to achieve anything more than that. And if you're achieving something significantly less, you've done something wrong. Either the computer you plugged it into isn't right, you used the wrong cable, or you did not put in an NVMe drive. Those are the most likely reasons you will get different numbers, if you get different numbers. If you get all the same numbers, that's different. Now, what just caught my eye, do you see the write speed being 589? When you see an extreme difference from 3000 to like 600, that indicates to me the drive is in fact overheating. So whatever that cooling fan is doing, it's not enough. Now these Samsung 970s, they're not known for running hot. Let me just say that right out of the gate. But if you're having any thermal issues, you don't necessarily have to watch thermal temps. You can just see it. You can see that happening right there. So the only reason that explains the 589 on the writes but the 3000 on the reads is by the time it did the reads, it got so hot because it does all the reads on the left that by the time it got to the writes, it was super hot. So if, for example, if I stop this test and we give the drive a minute to cool down and we do only the write speed, right? Just let this sit for a minute. And again, it's not hot. Now, I bet you if I put the thermal pad on and we start transferring the heat off of the NVMe drive onto this lid, we'll start feeling it. We'll also probably get rid of that low speed. But just to test the theory, it doesn't take but a minute to let these things cool off, by the way. We can go into the details of Crystal Diskmark and say I want to do the write tests only. So if I go over here to, what is it, Profile? Say, we'll do the write test right there. And then I'll hit this button. Now, let's see what the write speed is now that it's had a few moments to cool off. See if that gets closer to the read speed. Somewhere around 3000, 3200 is what I want to see. It's what I'm expecting to see. Now, so it appears either something is wrong or more than likely the drive is still really hot. So the next step will be not shutting it down, I suppose. Well, there is no on-off on this, is there? So I suppose we just safely disconnect it. So we go down here. It's an interesting experiment to see how important that thermal tape is. And that's also why you don't want to over tighten the screws until you're absolutely certain you don't need to get back in there. Otherwise, you'll be struggling. And every time you struggle, you risk stripping out the screw, or you risk hamming the screw head. So with that now safe to remove, let's unplug. And let's take another look in here. And I imagine that NVMe drive is going to be really hot, even though I can't really feel it through the lid. Let's try going full screen again on this side. In fact, we should just go to camera 2 with the close-up camera. And let me get my glasses so as I could see. This just got really interesting. I honestly thought the Samsung 970 in and of itself wouldn't get that hot, but there's no other reason I can think of why it would go so slow on the writes. This should be a super easy diagnostic and a super easy fix. It is kind of a shame also to have this giant heatsink and not be using it, even if you don't need it. It's not like anybody complains their drive runs too cool. So here's my thought. First of all, you know, it's not really that hot. It really isn't. But again, they don't take very long to cool off, so it's really hard to say. But let's we'll add the tape over the controller. And I do feel like that's just too shallow, so I think I'm going to add this other piece. We'll stack it. Because this is a single-sided drive, and we're likely going to run into the same problem, where it's going to be a little bit too long. By the way, you can buy thermal tape if you're like, oh, I cut it, I tore it. You can just buy thermal tape on Amazon. It's not expensive. And out of there. So I'm going to just double stack it here. And what I want when I put this lid on is I want it to just kind of, I need it to be just a slightly overstuffed suitcase. See, I still feel like we're not making contact here. That's not happening. So I'm not sure why, but just for the sake of experimentation, knowing that the part that gets hot, the part we're really focused on, is this part right over here. Right here on the controller side. Let's stack it up over there, because that's likely where the heat buildup's coming from. So now I'm 4 layers thick. Will it make contact with the lid now? Okay, you see this? This is, I've gone too far the other way. Oh, wait a minute. No, I think there was something else there. I am still not making, there's a little slot right in here you can see in there. And I'm still not making contact with this lid. Wow. Well, that's interesting. Why is that sitting so low? Well, there's no sense putting this on if it won't make contact with the lid. And yeah, we might see a little issue of design, at least with this NVMe drive. I almost feel like I could get a heatsink put on this NVMe drive and still be able to close that lid with a thin heatsink. I wonder. I should have those heat sinks laying around here somewhere. You know what? The X1 came with heat sinks, didn't it? Let's try something out of curiosity, pure curiosity. We've got these very inexpensive. You can buy these on Amazon, like 2 for $6 or something. They're just metal heat sinks. They're pretty thin. I'll use the thermal tape we've already got, and then you just need basically 2 of these rubber bands to hold it down. They're very inexpensive. But at $125 for the drive, it should give us everything we need. Again, unless it's not a heat-related issue. For those write speeds to be so low compared to the read, that almost always will indicate a heat problem. So I could be misdiagnosing this, by the way. There could be something else going on here. So we're going to try this first because, well, quite frankly, that's what I think it is. And until I prove myself wrong, then we'll, if necessary, look at alternative solutions here. Or at least alternative potential solutions. Now, because this heatsink is adding so much height, we're going to use the thinner of the two thermal tape. Grab that. Just grab the thin stuff here. And again, I want to put it over the controller. I would argue you really don't even need it anywhere other than on the controller itself. Covering up the individual NAND chips is probably not good, especially the space between the NAND chips. When you cover those with tape, you're blocking the airflow between them. So that may be doing the opposite. But the NAND chips typically don't get hot enough where it's an issue anyway, so it may be just me nerding out a little bit over some tech minutia. It's the controller you got to worry about. All right, should be about right there. I just want to make sure I've got enough of a space here for that to get seated, and enough of a space here for the rubber nub to hold it in place. Now, normally you would use these bands, but in this case, I don't think I need to. I think the lid will make contact now. Let's see what happens. If you're not careful putting these rubber bands on, they snap pretty easily. Again, they're cheap to order more, but if you don't have any, well, I can see a problem already with the fan right here being in the way. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave this open because that alone might be all we need. Let's find out if this makes any difference whatsoever. Because if it doesn't make any difference, then it's likely not a heat-related problem. I can also reach over and touch it, and it should be very hot if it's a heat-related problem. In other words, it should be pretty obvious. Let's see. We'll go back over to this computer here. So let me just put the camera in the corner, like so. Okay, now let's plug it back into the USB4 port. Now we should see something alert us to, hey, you've got a formatted drive. Yeah, click here to view it, which we can do. And we can see there's nothing on it. Let's go back to our Crystal Disk Mark, which is still in the write mode only. And let's run the same write performance test to see, because it's definitely cooled off now. And we'll make sure we're on drive D, and we'll hit this top button. We're going to watch this right side. Let's move this over here. And if we're still seeing 589 or 600, there's something wrong. Yeah, so it's not heat related, which again, I didn't think the 970s had any heat related issues. There's something else happening here, which is quite interesting. The next thing I want to do, I'm going to stop this test. Let's give that a stop. Let's come down here and eject the drive. I can see the blue light blinking. It says it's safe to remove even though the blue light is on. I wonder if that fan is spinning. Let me check that too, because maybe it's so quiet. Yeah, that little tiny fan is spinning. Yeah, I just saw it stop. I want to come around to the back USB port. Don't I have one in the back? Yes, I do have a USB4 in the back. Just to see if that makes any difference at all. So I'm going to move this. By the way, not good to let it hang by the power cable there. But this is not a heat-related problem. I'm going to try this. Plug it in the back. I see the fan start up. And then there's our drive opened and acknowledged. Let's run this test again. No. So on the one hand, it's consistent, right? When we're diagnosing a problem, it's important that the problem is not intermittent if you ever want to get it solved in this life. So the idea that it's consistent is good. That means we can repeat the issue so that when this issue is resolved, we know for a fact it's resolved. We're not wondering, because it only does it sometimes, did we fix it? So now the question is, could it be the cable? Could it be the USB4 on this computer? So let me try something else here. I know we have our competitors' drives. Let me see if I can locate those and see if they perform the same. Because now I got to figure out if it's my A1XI, which it shouldn't be, the latest and greatest of mini PCs there. Or is it the enclosure? Or is it the drive? It should not be the drive. I've never had an issue with Samsung drives. There could always be a first time. And where did I put those enclosures? I know I've got them here. Bear with me for a second, because as I mentioned, we still have studio under renovation, so things are a little bit disorganized. It's kind of partly organized and partly not. And the part we're looking for is in the not organized part. Otherwise, I'd have it in my hands right now. Did I put that? Where did I put it? Okay, maybe it's over here. I didn't bring them out before showtime because I didn't think I'd need to. I'd just refer you to those videos if you were curious how those items perform. But now that we're having an unexpected event and I'm trying to diagnose it, I'm trying to whittle down where this is coming from. Now I wish I had looked for these and set them aside for just in case. And where did I put them? I thought, well, maybe not. Oh, there. Guess I put them away somewhere good. Well, rats. It'll be hard for me to diagnose this if I don't have something to compare it to. I think, let's see if we go over here. Huh. No, I didn't put them over here either. What did I do with those? What was I thinking whenever I moved those? I was probably thinking I better put these where I can find them. I bet you that's what I was thinking. Oh, I found them. They're on the floor. They are on the floor behind a chair against a wall, right exactly where I'd be looking for them, right? Okay, let's get these up off the floor. Sorry about that. Okay, what can you do? I knew I had them. I'll make sure I put them away in a good spot this time. I have a Beijing drive right here. And I have the ZikeDrive and I have the ORICO drive. Now, let me go back over to, well, let me do a couple things. Let's close this out. And then let's eject external enclosure there. Now we can unplug. And now we can go back to full screen on camera 1. Okay, so far so good. One thing what I'm not a fan of in this design is anytime they attach thin wires when you've got a part that's moving, this is something an end user is going to break. I can almost guarantee it. Most people that would be technical enough to buy one of these probably won't have any problem, but you're going to have some non-technical people who also see it and want to buy it. They're going to learn the hard way, and they're probably going to get a refund when they damage it, because that's usually the way it works, and then it costs the company money because the end user damaged it. And if you don't refund it, then you got to deal with a negative review, da-da-da-da-da. So the best thing you can do when you're designing is make something as bulletproof as possible. Make it so it's very difficult for an end user to screw it up. And this is not that. Like just having a couple metal contacts here and on the circuit board that when they touch together, the fan comes on, would have been a much better design. So I do like Silverstone overall, but I don't like everything they do. And right now, well, I was very excited about testing this. My enthusiasm, unfortunately, is waning because we didn't have such problems with the ORICO or ZikeDrive with a proper cable. Could this also be a cable issue? Anything is possible right now. So what I want to do first, before I go any further, is see if our ZikeDrive performs, because maybe it's a compatibility. You know, you run into all these maybes, right? So I'm trying to figure out what's most likely. What's also easiest for me to test. So with the ZikeDrive, it's super easy for me to just pop it in there. Okay, slide it into slot. I do like the little rubber stopper. A little clip, more or less like what ASUS uses on their boards, is even easier. Or even the rotating locking mechanism is easier than the rubber plugs. The rubber plugs are okay. They're better than the little pull tabs that I thought it had, and they're better than using a physical screw. But I don't understand, if this is really meant to be locked in there, why not use a physical screw? I mean, you screwed down the lid, why don't you screw down the drive too? Is it going to be toolless or is it not going to be toolless? If it requires tools to take the lid off, then it should require tools to take the NVMe out. And if it doesn't require tools, I think you know where I'm going with this, to take the NVMe out, I shouldn't require tools to take the lid off. This is more of a permanent enclosure. I don't see any point of having that rubber plug. And if it's a more permanent enclosure, then this wire is a one-time thing and it's less of an issue. But if you just put metal tabs on here, contacts, it would never be an issue, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it open like I did before. We're going to plug this back in. Front and rear USB4 ports are running identical, so we don't see, as they should be, by the way, but we don't see any, it's not leaning one way or the other in performance. Let's turn this way. And then I'm going to plug it into the USB port right here. And this is a pretty stiff cable. It's not all that flexible, so bear that in mind as well. Many of these USB cables that will transfer at these high speeds are thick cables, and therefore they're not as flexible as, say, a USB charging cable, which doesn't have to be anywhere near that thick or that short. They could probably have made that a little bit longer, but I'm not quite sure what the deciding factor was involving cost and potential loss of data the longer the cable is. I'm assuming they've given you the best performance first and maybe cost second. And those cables, USB-C cable, that is like, let's say, Thunderbolt 4 capable, it's not uncommon for those cables to be $30 just for the cable. So I think a lot of people, when you're looking at the price of some of these things, you're not realizing if it includes the cable, that could be a quarter of the price just for that USB-C cable. It's not a charging cable. Let's go back over here. Guess I can put myself in the corner again. Right, like so. Right click, full screen for me on the desktop. Now the ZikeDrive, did I format that? No, it's completely wiped. All right, so once again, we're going to go to disk management. So this ZikeDrive is in the condition it would be if it were brand new out of the box with no partition, no format. We'll go to disk management. Should tell us, hey, here's a new drive detected. Yes, it does. That's great. We're going to right click on that, new simple volume, same exact setup and everything. And that already feels faster. I wonder why. Let's see, because that felt a lot quicker. Will it also be quicker on the writes over here, or will it be the same? Place your bets. I'm going to hit the all button, or this button over here, but remember, we're just going to do the write test, which happens to be on the right side. See what that number becomes. 3709. That is ridiculous. That's much, much faster. So let's try it. Let's stop the test. Let's change our profile back to, what was it under? Read and write mix, I think was the default. And let's do all the testing. So that tells us it's not our USB ports, it's not the USB cable, and it was not heat related. That's interesting given how popular Samsung drives are, that a Samsung drive would be the one showing some incompatibility. In theory, 40 gigabits per second is 4,000 megabytes per second. And when they showed 3200 on their speed test at Silverstone, it seems pretty clear to me they undersold this, because it looks like 3800 is possible. Now, I believed 3800 was possible, but I didn't want to make that claim because I just wasn't real confident. Was it 3800? I couldn't remember. So instead, it's always safe to say, hey, the manufacturer's going to show you the best it can do. And clearly, the manufacturer in this case did not show you the best it could do. But I think if we look at the test results of the ZikeDrive and the ORICO, both USB4 enclosures or Thunderbolt 4 enclosures, I think we saw closer to 3800. What's interesting is the Samsung drive performed. Wait a minute. They said they used a Samsung drive in their testing, didn't they? Silverstone may be underselling this drive. Maybe it's an important consideration that when we talk about, especially earlier, you're never going to do better than the manufacturer says it can do, right? I just said that. I literally said, what's the point of testing? The variations should have been tested by Silverstone. And most big companies aren't just going to test one brand of drive. They'll test several different brands, and they're going to pick the one that performed the best. It doesn't seem like that's what happened here. That's very unusual. It's almost like they just tested it with one drive, or their stable of drives they're testing with are older models, and that was the best one out of the bunch. Because yeah, I think 3800 is where we should be sitting. Now, as you can see, we're not affected by heat here. It's still, 3608. So apparently we really don't need that thermal tape. We have an issue with the thermal tape even reaching the lid. So I'm going to ding Silverstone on the thermal tape issue. I'm going to ding Silverstone on the wiring. I'm going to ding Silverstone on the fact that it's toolless, but it requires screws to take the lid off. I'm not a fan of that. I also don't like that the screw type is not a standard Phillips. They're using a proprietary and very uncommon Torx, although they are giving you the driver. It's a very difficult driver to use. I would rather see a latch down mechanism with the fan being controlled, as I mentioned, with contacts rather than a wire. And it's fine if they want to use that rubber plug. That's not make or break for me. That's fine. In order to maintain that 2242 backward compatibility, you need to be able to remove that plug and move it. For me personally, I'd like to say good riddance to the 2242, because those aren't going to perform this fast anyway, likely. So why bother having that compatibility? Just give me a more permanent, like what a motherboard would have, like on Asus, a modern motherboard where you could just click the drive into place, or that there's a little spinny locking mechanism, and make it so you just don't move it. I don't know what the percentage of people using these with 2242 are compared to a 2280. And I'm referring to the length of the NVMe drive. 2242 is 22 millimeters wide, 42 millimeters in length. The drives I'm using here in this example are 22 millimeters wide and 80 millimeters in length, like a stick of gum. These are the far more common drives. I feel like if Silverstone wants to make a 2242 enclosure, you could cut this in half. And since it's really not intended to be swappable, in other words, like the other enclosures I use, you can pull the drive out and put the drive in, it's no big deal. This is intended to be more permanent. So why would you buy an overly large enclosure to just stick a half-size NVMe in there? Why wouldn't you just buy a half-size enclosure if it's intended to be permanent? So I struggle with all of that. It makes no sense to me. So now my next question is, so I don't need to test these other ones. We realize now, I realize it's the drive. I have another Samsung drive. Is it just the 970? It seemed to me, well, now wait a minute. This Beijing drive is Gen 4. Interesting. Is the 3200 limitation of the Gen 3? Oh. Well, let's go to Gen 5. Now you want to talk about something that generates some heat. Ooh, Gen 5, that will get hot real quick. I'm pretty sure I have a Gen 5 drive laying around here somewhere. Where have I heard this story before? Let me just take a quick look. This one, all right, Carey. Aha. Speaking of which, I was confusing the MS12 with the TS16. So I found my TS16, which has a Gen 5 drive in it, which I was not getting to work. I don't know if that, this is a whole nother can of worms, okay? But I was going to reset this drive, and when I plugged it into this unit, it won't see it. So I think there's something incompatible here. I've never run into this problem before. But if we go over to, let's go over to camera 1, and we'll go full screen over here. You've seen me use this a bunch. It's called a TS16 from Silverstone. This is how it's sold. There's no lid, there's no screws. You've got that little rubber stopper. I bend it back, pull the drive out. It has an on and off button, which I appreciate. As a tech, this is my absolute favorite enclosure. And it's because it's temporary. I don't want a permanent external NVMe enclosure. I'll copy files to my NAS, you know. That's me. That being said, this is a Team Group Z540. A pretty pricey little flash drive. What happens if we change that one out? In theory, here's my theory. The Gen 4 drive that we just put in there, when placed into a Gen 4x4 motherboard, will do 7,300 megabytes per second. The fact that we're getting about half of that shows me the full potential of Gen 3 if there was no overhead. That's what I think is happening. So what I want to do now is we will disconnect. Hold on a minute. Let me go back to, oh, it downloaded updates. Lucky me. Well, let's go ahead and have it restart. Why not? We'll let it do that, whatever it's doing. And then my other question now becomes, was doing an update in the background affecting our write speed? Because we still should have seen, even if 3200 was the tops, we still should have seen very close to that on the writes. We're nowhere near that at 589, or let's just round it up to 600 for the benefit of being positive. We'll get to the bottom of this. Yeah. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat room. Long Dog wonders if there's a firmware update for the Samsung. I mean, it's possible. I would have to install the drive into a motherboard. I don't think the Samsung software will see it in an enclosure. And if I go through that effort and then install the Samsung Magician software, it would let me know if there was a firmware update. But I've not seen a firmware update on a Samsung drive for many years. about 2 or 3 years. So I don't think there is, but it's possible. I mean, we'd have to look just to be sure. Now there will be an 80 gig USB 4 that'll double the speed again. So when we, in the future, I predict we're going to see another enclosure for USB 4 Gen 2 or USB 4.2. I can't remember what they're calling it. But everything with computers doubles. All right, so when we're looking at Gen 3 speeds versus Gen 4, 3600 versus 7300, it doubles. When we go to Gen 5, it doubles again to about 15,000. When you're looking at storage capacities, you have 64 gig, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048, 4096, 8192, 16384, 32. It keeps going and going. It just keeps doubling. So that's what happens with all our USB speeds. We go from 10 gig to 20 to 40, then the next is 80. So we will soon be getting USB 4 Gen 2, or again, I can't remember the name of it. The spec is already done. The chipsets aren't ready yet, but that'll be coming probably next year or so. And then so will the accessories. Then it'll make sense to use Gen 4, because if we can go to 80 gigs per second, we can now fully saturate a Gen 4 drive. And if we're seeing 3200 out of this, double it. If we're seeing 3700 out of this, we're exceeding the capacity of what that drive can do, which is 7300. So we should see the 7300 speed back and forth on Gen 4. USB 4 Gen 2, or again, whatever they're calling it. I'm sure somebody will tell me what it's called. It has an official name. All these USB standards, just over the top ridiculous. They should be changing the number and not the generation. Call it USB 40 if it's 40 gig. Call it USB 10 if it's 10 gig. Call it USB 5 if it's 5 gig. Hey, this isn't rocket science, guys. But I like to keep things simple, and engineers like to keep things complicated. I think people pay more for complicated things. Mark Gaines with a 10-pound super chat said, Carey, I was trying to do an image backup of my new build, but it keeps failing. Do you have any ideas why it would be doing that? Well, we'd have to know what kind of backup you were making, what software you were using, and what you were backing it up to, and what the failure means. I need to know specifically what the failure message is before I could help you, what software you're using. And probably for that, you'd want to go to our forums, where we could spend a little bit more time inquiring, interrogating you to provide us the information you're not providing us. So I don't know what a new machine is. I don't know what processor you're running. I don't know what operating system, but that's not as important to know. I mean, I'm presuming you're using a modern CPU, be it Intel or AMD. That doesn't really make much difference. But I'm assuming it's Windows 11. But I have no idea what you're using for backup and specifically what failure message you're getting. So if you leave a message at CareyHolzman.boards.net, we can follow up there. Or if you want to talk to people here in the chat room while we're live, and perhaps some folks in the chat will have some ideas for you. But please, if you want to do that, let us know what the backup software is and specifically what the error message says. And I'm sure we can get you a solution. Okay. You think this is rebooted by now? Let's see. Oh, well, apparently pretty significant update. That's crazy. There we go. It just wanted my attention. What can you do? Let me put camera 1 back up in the corner here real quick. Grab it over here and drag it over there. Keep them both on screen. That was a big update. I don't know what it was, but for a machine of that power to take that long to install it, that was a pretty big update. And I can't help but wonder if that update was running in the background. Is that why maybe our performance was dropped? But then why only on the writes? And now what happened to my desktop? I have seen, and I'm researching this, but I've seen a recent Windows update that on the first reboot, and I don't know how many of you have seen this or if any of you know anything about it, because I've seen it about 4 times now. So where I initially dismissed it as a fluke, there's some Windows update that's coming in that seems to be messing with the graphics driver. And the way that I have fixed it is simply by unplugging the computer, forcing it off, and then plugging it back. Let it sit for a second and wait for the fans to stop spinning. And it seems to self-correct. And I don't know what this is, but I do know it is related to a Windows update, and it's been happening on desktops, laptops, and mini PCs. I want to say, I must have seen it more than 4 times. It's not like I saw it once on each. Maybe it's like 8 times I've seen this now over the last month. Whatever it is, it's pretty recent. And it does seem to auto-correct. It does seem to fix itself. Let's see if it gets to the desktop this time. We'll just give it a second as it's initializing here, because you'll know when it says Elgato, it's not getting a signal. And I've seen this a number of times now. That's got me a little concerned about a Windows update. But no customers have called me with this. This is just from my personal experience updating machines around. Excuse me, around the studio. Okay, excuse me. As you can see, I'm leaving the lid off of this just to prove that there's no real heat concerns here with this stuff. Now, I mean, geez, are there any more updates that we're waiting? I thought I had this all updated already, so I didn't expect that either. And that's what happens when we go live, right? Anybody else that makes YouTube videos will almost always edit all that out. You'll never see it, you'll never know, and they'll never even talk about it. So they're lying to you. They're controlling the message the way they want you to see the message. I don't control the message. I will tell you something that turns out immediately prove myself wrong, where there's an exception, right? I can say to you, for example, every time I do this, this happens. So therefore, that's what you should see. And no sooner than I say that and I demonstrate it, it does something different. That's just the way it works in this business. Now, that's not normal. I wouldn't say that happens most of the time, but believe me, when it happens, I really wish I could edit that out. But I'm so glad that I don't, because I want you to think about every time you see a video and it cuts to another scene, what did they cut? Or if somebody's talking and then the next they're talking this way, that's a cut. So likely it might sound like they completely finished a sentence, but more than likely they cut something out, and the way they make it look smooth is to change the camera angle. At the same time, they make the cut so that you never hear the words they said. They use all these techniques that, unless you're watching live and unedited, you should assume they're controlling the message. They are absolutely manipulating what they want you to see. They have every right to do that, and I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong. I don't want to do it that way. I want to keep everything real. And if it means in teaching that there are some exceptions to the rules, well, I've been saying that too, but for whatever reason, people tend to lock into, well, you said this and this happened, but I also said there were exceptions. I said there are no absolutes in anything. So, well, death and taxes, I suppose. But the point is that no matter what it does, no matter if it proceeds the way I expect it to or it doesn't, I always get it done, always. A lot of times I go into some projects thinking, okay, I've done this a million times, I need these tools, I need to be prepared for this or that, and then something entirely different and unexpected happens. But it doesn't usually end with me going, I give up and it can't be done. And that's where you test your mettle as a technician, not in some scripted, edited video. Anybody can pretend to be a tech. But those of us who can go live Show that yes, some unexpected events will occur. That's normal, and it's not a big deal. It really isn't. The bigger deal was just, by letting you know, hey, this is the way this process should go. The bigger deal is on your pride that it didn't do it the way you said it would. But that's a human problem. That's not a technical problem. And I don't have an issue with exposing that, because anybody else who hides it is just lying to you. So I'd rather be honest, and you'll see that these challenges that I deal with day to day, video to video, are always overcome. And I hope it inspires you that when things don't go the way some video showed you it should go, that you don't throw your hands in the air and go, oh, well, something's broken. I guarantee you can work it out. And of course, we're here as a community to help you out if you run into any problems. But what we run into more these days are people wanting to know how they can avoid problems. Can you tell me what's going to happen if I do this or if I do that? No, just do it. Do it or don't do it. If you do it, you'll probably be successful. If you don't do it, nobody can tell you if you're going to be successful or not. Well, I want to do it, but I want to make sure I don't run into any problems. Oh, well, can you imagine a life that you go through without any obstacles or challenges? Why would that even be worth getting out of bed? What a most boring, slow, dull life. Who would want that? Invite the problems, because those are opportunities for you to learn. And when you see me say something and something happens opposite, you're watching learning. Who shows you learning actually happening while it's happening? This is what learning looks like, and it should be embraced and celebrated. If you walk away because you have a problem or an issue as a result of something, whatever it is, just something you're actually dealing with outside of your imagination, okay? Because I can't help you. I can't reach in your brain and fix that. But if you have a problem, a technical problem, that anybody who sits at that computer would see, we can fix that every single time. Every time. And not just me, our whole community here. But if you won't do it because you're afraid of a mistake, or you're afraid you won't be ready for it, you're never, ever going to be ready for it. And if it was that easy, why would you even bother wasting your time? So don't fear that. It's the opposite. Look forward to it. It almost disappoints me when I build a machine and it turns on without any problems. Honestly, I'm like, it's too easy, I could have had somebody else do that. Takes the fun out of it. It's like playing a level on a game, and maybe you paid $70 for this game and you blow through the whole game in like 20 minutes. That is not satisfying for most people. Not enough challenge. Now, with the latest updates apparently installed, let me go back and turn off camera one for a second. We should be good to go here. I want to do 2 more tests on this. One, I want to see if those updates running in the background might have been interfering with our write speed. So we're going to check one more time, and if this comes up good, and it does, then what I'm going to do here, full screen here, I'm going to close this window, and I'm going to safely eject the phasing. What's interesting, what's kind of got my attention, is normally you don't see the drive, you see the controller. If you ever run into an issue where you cannot eject your USB drive, it won't stop it. One of the things that I like to do is just go to the yellow folder down here and then right-click on the drive and see if there's an eject option. And on many USB drives, there is. On this one, though, it's behaving as though it's installed internally. But you can often hit eject, and then it might say, hey, it's in use, do you want to stop it anyway? So if I do this one more time, I'm just going to try stopping it one last time. Yeah, see, now that time it worked. But alternately, you can go and use the eject option on flash drives, every flash drive. And that's an alternate way to force it down without having to hit Control-Alt-Delete or just pulling the plug, if that matters to you. Let's get back over to, let's do camera 2. And now that this is unplugged, oh, this is hot now. Oh boy. Wow. What a difference. Okay, there's definitely something going on here. So let's take our Gen 4 drive out. I want to put the Samsung drive in. I'm just surprised the sides are so hot. The drive never even touches the sides. Why are the sides so hot? My guess is it's pulling heat from the bottom of the NVMe drive through the circuit board onto the bottom plate, and then that's probably getting hot from underneath. Yeah, that's pretty warm. Let's try the Samsung one more time just to see if there was an error in our testing, which would be that those updates were downloading in the back. So now we've got the Samsung back in there. I am just going to run into all kinds of problems over here, aren't I? You see what I'm saying with this fan attached? Let's just take the fan off of here. Because that is so delicate. I am not a fan of that fan. Yeah. That is on there good. Do not pull it by the cables. You will rip those cables right out of there with very little effort. They'll just pop right out. Then you're going to have a whole different problem on your hands. Usually a pair of tweezers or maybe a fine pair of needle nose pliers to grab the actual connector. But the problem when you use a tool is you could accidentally put too much pressure on the tool. Delicate work. There we go. Let's just leave that off for right now. That's driving me crazy. We're going to plug this back in over here. And let's go back to, let's see, turn that off. Turn this one back on. And full screen over here for me. Okay, so back over to Crystal Disk Mark. Oops. Again, I'm just interested on the write cycle on the 970 here. So let's do profile. Is it profile? Yeah, let's just do the write mix. And let's see if that has changed anything. Wouldn't that be silly? No, I was hopeful. I was hopeful, but yeah, that's all right. That's all right. So now I wonder, will the Samsung Magician software see this? Because when I right-click down here, normally on an enclosure, you'll see the name of the enclosure, not the name of the drive. Because it's showing us the name of the drive, I'm wondering, maybe the Samsung software will function. So I have that on this flash drive, my utilities flash drive. And I'll just plug it in over here. I do wish this had more than one USB Type-A in the back. It's such a well-equipped computer, it falls short there. So we'll use these up here instead. Let's go to Samsung Magician, the installer. We'll install it right off the flash drive. Close that out. This is going to be, I think, my new test bench, so I'm going to be putting software on and off of it. You know, we had the whole NVIDIA drivers on it with the external dock. And I uninstalled those, but they're still kind of lingering in the system. So probably at some point I'll have to do a clean install on this, because software like the Samsung Magician and software like the NVIDIA drivers gets into a lot of areas of the system that doesn't fully come out of. And that could have lingering effects. I'm not suggesting in our sample here that I think that has anything to do with it, but that over time, using this as a test bench, it's important that I have an image to restore back to, which I've not created yet. So we're just going to deal with that when it comes. Too busy. So, and this is fine for now. I'm just curious if it'll see the drive. Finish here. And then the software should start and give us our health status if it can see the drive in the enclosure. And it does. That's pretty incredible. We've got the Crucial branded drive that Minis Forum, because I've never opened this mini PC. So that's the drive that came with it. So we know that's the only Samsung drive. It says there's an update here. And it says we're using the latest firmware. So there is no firmware update. There's only a Samsung Magician software update. That tells me I have to update my flash drive, don't I? The latest version of that on there. But likely, we have some kind of a compatibility issue happening here, which I will bring to SilverStone's attention because it ain't right. And so, like I said, by putting the Samsung Magician on here strictly for this test, and then I install the Samsung Magician software updated again, which is installing the whole thing on top of itself with the latest version. That's how Samsung does it. Over time, if I continue to do this with other software I'm testing, my test unit is going to start to get unreliable. So it's always best that we do like an image beforehand and then set everything back so you don't have to, like at some point, I'm just going to have to wipe and reinstall it. And when I do that with all the drivers and updates, at that point, then like use Acronis and make an image of it. I haven't done that, that's what I'm trying to tell you. So for now, we can continue testing with this unit, but at some point, likely there'll be an opportunity where time will avail itself where I can just sit down one evening and do that. But it's not like we have to do it after every test. It would be a good practice though. All right, so now with the latest version of Samsung Magician, you'll see there are no updates. The drive is healthy. Everything looks good. In fact, if we install this drive into this computer, we will see reads and writes in the mid 3000s. So we're not getting the full write or full read speed out of this on the enclosure that we would be. And we're supposed to, just like with the Beijing, that's performing nearly, well, the Beijing drive, if it were installed in a motherboard in a Gen 4 slot, we'll see 7,300 megabytes on the reads and 6,000 something on the writes, 6,800, something like that. So one thing that I want you to take away from this is that we've not yet dealt with any heat-related issues. And I want to emphasize that because the internet would have you believe that heat issues are the most common. But here in this line of work, I very rarely, in 34 years of doing this business, have resolved any issues regarding heat. It just doesn't necessarily happen in reality the way people talk about it online. Now, maybe the people online are overclocking and creating, you know, little fire pits out of their computers. But a stock computer left alone shouldn't require anything special for cooling. It's only after you've turbocharged it and set it over its engineering limits that you should have to deal with those consequences. And so maybe the internet's filled with a bunch of people who do that, so it's giving the impression that so many people are having heat problems that just wouldn't exist if they would have just left it stock. That's my theory. Now this is the Team Group Gen 5, which I was having trouble even seeing in this other enclosure. Wouldn't even see this drive. So I'm guessing the enclosure controller is to blame on that. It's important that when you want to pair the latest technology, when you want to use it, that you use it also with the latest technology. If you bought a brand new computer, but your monitor is 15 years old, you're going to have issues. I promise you're going to have weird issues. Anytime you mix old and new, and by old I mean something that's 6 years old or more, you've got an old external drive you've been using for backups, and you bought a brand new computer, and now you want to continue using that old external drives for your backups, go right ahead, but you're going to have problems. I don't know when, but it's coming. Could be right out of the gate. Could be the computer doesn't fire up right. It takes too long to boot up. It's always going to be related to the old hardware blended with the new. Whether it's a printer, whether it's a USB drive, whether it's a monitor, whether it's even your USB cables, if you don't make it all equal, you have an imbalance. And with that imbalance, you may have some stability issue or even issue getting it to work at all. Now, if you're lucky enough that it's not causing you a problem to mix, that's great. But I can almost guarantee the first problem you have, and I promise you there will be a problem sooner or later, statistically will be the old piece of hardware that fails or causes that problem first because it's the oldest. So one way or another, you will be dealing with that problem statistically. And you can avoid that by simply, when you're replacing something, be ready for it. Or if you can afford to change out these other pieces of hardware that are over 6 years old, when buying something like a new computer, be prepared to replace those items. Just go ahead and do it. You likely won't have any issues. But if the older the equipment gets, the higher the statistic goes that you're going to have an issue that needs to be resolved, and that resolution will almost always be that older hardware just got too old. So that's coming from experience. It's not a universal absolute, but I assure you, if somebody calls me with a computer problem and I find out, for example, their printer has stopped working and they got a brand new laptop, or it's within the last couple of years, everything else has been fine. Tell me about this printer. How old is it? Oh, we've had this printer since 1996. I already know what the solution is. We don't have to take I'm going to save you some money. You don't have to pay me. It's time for you to buy a new printer. But it was working fine yesterday. Yes, that's also how death works, right? Everything in this world, light bulbs, yes, it works until it doesn't. You don't always get a warning. You could just drop dead. You can have an aneurysm. I just talked to him an hour ago. Yeah, because he didn't have the aneurysm an hour ago. I don't know why people seem so shocked about this. That's everything in life. I just had the light bulb on in that room 2 minutes ago, and now it won't come on. Yeah, because it died. Well, it didn't give me any warning. No. Maybe you get a warning, maybe you don't. It's not guaranteed. And the older that light bulb is, the more likely it's going to die. I mean, it just goes with all things statistically. It's not the only reason things go. But when you're trying to diagnose a problem, and it involves a monitor connected to a computer, connected to a printer, connected to an external drive, the first thing I want to know is, how old is that monitor? How old is that computer? I'm trying to figure out which piece of equipment is the oldest. That's where I start the diagnosis. My computer takes forever to boot up. Do you have an external drive plugged into it? Yeah. Have you tried booting up without the external drive? Well, no, because it was working. No, stop. If it was working, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But, no but. Have you tried it? No. End of sentence. No. Would you try it now? Yes. It doesn't need to be a full dialogue of explanation about explaining engineering to you. I mean, if you want to be an engineer, there's school for that. All right. So this is our Gen 5 drive, and I don't expect it's going to run any faster than our Gen 4 because we only hit half the speed possible out of that. But I'm curious, will it see it? Will it work? Let's find out. Martin Hogg with £4.99 said, Carey, get yourself a Big Mac and a Coke. Thank you, Martin. Let's see. Right click on the output here. Okay, now I can see it. Let's go back over to Crystal Dismark and let's see what it does this time. And let me go back to the full test. Now, if anything overheats, this drive does get very, very hot. So, profile, we'll go back to the read-write mix. Big drive. Oh, it doesn't see a drive. Oh, right click, disk management. I may have the same problem. This is interesting. So this drive down here, this appears to be our drive. Let me unplug it. Let me see if that goes away. It does go away. Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't check this before in the other enclosure. Is there something about the format? Is it in RAID? No, it sees everything. Why is there no drive letter? We don't want to convert it. Properties. Wow, that's weird. All right. So here we go with more unexpected learning opportunities. So let's go down to the command prompt and let's run through our stable of standard process. And we always do the standard things first to just get them out of the way, because most of the time they fix the problem. So if I type in disk part, do I see disk 1 listed? List disk. It is there. So let's select disk 1. This is a little scary because you're like, well, geez, Carey, they're both the same size. How do you know which is which? Almost universally, the drive 0 will be your boot drive, almost universally. And I don't think it'll let you erase your boot drive while you're in your boot drive, but do be cautious with this. I'm a bit fast and loose when it comes to tech stuff like this. But I think that just cleaning this drive, that I've selected the right drive. I did select the right drive. It does say it's disk 1 here. It says it's unknown. We'll right click. See, that's really bizarre to me. Let me close this out. Let me close this out too. Let's go back to disk management. And let's see if it detects a new drive. It does. That's what I wanted. Okay. Right click, new simple volume. Formatting. See how long it's taking? It seemed like that Beijing formatted awfully fast. Blue light is blinking inside of the enclosure. Enclosure is not hot at all right now. So I feel like this is taking too long. Something ain't right. So I wonder if there's a compatibility issue here with some controllers. Let's run Crystal Disk Mark. Now it should see it as drive D. And let's just do the first read and write test on here. Kind of cool, isn't it? See, this is way more fun for me than just everything running the way it should. On the one hand, we'd have been done an hour ago and job done, pat myself on the back. On the other hand, it's definitely more interesting. It's unusual. I'm seeing something I haven't seen before. And now I'm curious about, well, where else does that apply? So that read speed of 3819 is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I wouldn't put a Gen 5 drive in here. I think that's a waste of money. But it does give us a little bit more performance, oddly enough. And then let's see what it does on our writes. So you see the writes drop significantly on this. And now I wonder, is that the same issue the Samsung drive is having, or is that a heat-related problem? So what I want to do for right now, because those two numbers should definitely be the same on a Gen 5 drive. Something bizarre is happening here. So I suppose what I need to do is grab another Gen 3 drive. So let's try ejecting this one. And by the way, you don't want to touch this drive right now. So when we eject it, I'm going to leave it in there to cool down. I'm going to walk over to the table, to my stable of NVMe drives, see what else we have we can test with that's maybe a little different. In fact, I have another 970 Evo, speaking of which. Is it the drive specifically, or is it the drive model or controller? So here's a new one. Here's the one we were using. This is a 990. I stand corrected. This is the 970. This is the 970 we had a problem with. We had no issues with the Beijing drive. And now the team group drive, which again, still I'm going to put it along with the 970 here, that it's not performing the way that I would expect it to. However, this doesn't advertise itself as a Gen 5 enclosure, so kind of breaking the rules there, just out of curiosity. Only because I can. Terrible reason, by the way. Let's plug this in now. Now, in theory, this should also need to be formatted like a brand new drive. So let's go to disk management. Oh, it's got stuff on it. Okay. Well, let's wipe it clean then, if that's the case. So back under the command as an administrator. And we're going to clean this drive. So disk part, list disk, should be disk 1. Select disk 1, clean, then exit. Exit again. Now when I go to device manager, sorry, not device manager. Right click, go to disk management. Right there. Should say, hey, you got a new drive? Yep. Okay. Right click, new simple volume. Next, next, next. This should happen quick. Oh, that's a 4 terabyte Gen 4 drive. Okay. See how much faster that happened? That almost tells me right out of the gate, we're going to be good here. I always talk about feeling. Something benchmarks will never give you is feeling. Sometimes things feel fast, regardless of what the benchmark says. Now, my question to you is, which benchmark has more value to reality in your everyday life? What you feel or what the computer says? If the computer says it's raining and cloudy outside and I look out the window and it's bright and sunny and dry, which one of those should I believe? Should I believe my eyes and my feelings when I step outside? Do I feel wet or do I feel hot? Do I feel the sun beating on me? Those feelings are far more accurate than any benchmark you'll ever run in your life. And when people put their priority on benchmark numbers, they're missing out on what it is to be a human being. Because defining your acceptance to how something feels by how it tells you to feel, well, that to me is removing your humanity. Look at the write speeds here. They're incredibly low. So we're back at the same issue of, we've got 3 brands now, right? And both Gen 4. This is getting warm though. So let's let it cool down. Oh yeah, that got really, really hot. When you double the speed of the drive, when you go from Gen 3 to Gen 4, you're not only doubling the speed, you're doubling the heat. Pretty much. It's just a general rule. When you keep getting a faster processor, you're going to need a bigger, more aggressive cooler. Unless you go with more efficient coolers. That's why, or more efficient CPU. That's the whole thing people don't get online about the Ultra series of Intel chips. Well, it's not any faster than the previous gen. It's using a fraction of the power. What do I care how much power? Well, people do care. The less power it uses, the easier it is to cool, the less money it costs to run, less electricity it's using. Some people don't see that value. All they see are performance numbers. And they go, well, the new chip should perform better. It is performing better with less power and generating less heat. But where's your benchmark for that? It doesn't fall into the whole sheep attitude, the sheeple of reviewers that just keep following the same circles over and over and over again and ignoring things like power supply heat, power supply airflow, and power consumption. They just oftentimes go right past that as though it's not a thing. They don't even mention it. Sometimes somebody will show they can boost their processor performance just briefly for milliseconds, and therefore it justifies spending a lot of time and effort changing thermal compound. It's not practical. If you enjoy doing that work or you're skilled at it and it's safe for you to do that, I'm not telling you not to, but if you want to actually do things that make a real measurable difference that you will feel as a user, that ain't one of them. Very rarely would that ever be one of them. But I'm not telling you not to do it. It's just You know, as a service technician, it's just not something we very often do. You know, we don't change thermal material on office computers. Corporate IT, as far as I know, doesn't change thermal material because heat is never an issue outside of maybe the server room, and that's going to be that's going to be a big industrial liquid cooling system that runs through the walls and floor. That's a whole nother beast than what people use at home. But that's just my opinion, being in the industry and what I see versus what I see online, which is like people living on two different planets sometimes. I want to just try the right speed now that this has had a minute to cool down, just to see if it's done anything different. I have a feeling we have a controller compatibility issue here. And isn't it interesting that the name brand, yeah, I don't need to take that any further. The name brand, the trusted name brand, is underperforming the Chinese no-name brand that everybody should be afraid of. Don't use that Chinese no-name Beijing drive unless you don't care about your data. Hey, if you don't care about your data, then obviously you don't have a backup, so what difference does it make? It's just a matter of time before you're going to lose it regardless. So you hear all this nonsense online, and you have to understand that when you really think about what somebody's saying, what they're saying is, I don't really understand computers, but I want everybody to know that. You've got to be able to look through that or determine what applies to you. And look, when you're driving in a car, people do this all the time. When you're driving in a car and you're stuck behind somebody going slow, how do you feel about that person going slow? They might say, I'm driving safely and I'm paying attention. And, you know, what do you say? You're an idiot. You don't know how to drive. When someone blows by you so fast, it like shocks you. You're like, oh my gosh. What do you say? That person's crazy. You should be doing the same thing with the information you see online. It's exactly the same. All right, this one's going to go into that category. So we've only found one drive that performs the way it should. What else do I have I can test with? This is getting quite interesting. I don't like the caveats that this drive does perform, provided you use the right drive. I mean, that shouldn't be a thing. Let's walk over here. I know I have more drives. I'm looking for other brands I can use. What do we have? Let's see. Here's a Crucial P5. Okay. There's another Samsung 970. Here's an Intel. Let's grab them all. That way we can test two 970s to make sure it's not a bad drive, okay? We're going to be extra thorough here. Plus, two brands we haven't already tested that are not known for their performance. Neither the Crucial nor the Intel are known for being best-in-class performance, but they are known for being very reliable and not generating as much heat. Not that heat has been an issue for us. I have felt this unit get warm, but not to the point where it's affected our performance. That's the other thing people don't seem to register. They just think all heat is bad, but there's a limit. So on an NVMe drive, getting above, say, 70 degrees Celsius, 65, 70 degrees is a little worrisome. I'm not measuring the heat on this because I don't have any reason to. It has not been the cause of our slowdown. So this is the Crucial. Let's go back to full screen. This is the Crucial P5 I've installed in there, okay? And then I've got these three. These are our second level here are the ones we're having issues with. That's a 970 Evo, a 990 Pro, and the Team Group Gen 5, the Z540. Those you don't want to use in this. Here, the Beijing so far has been the only one that has worked properly, and it's also the least expensive. Go figure. Beijing should be paying me some money, huh? Truth is truth, paid or not. So let's just keep moving forward. Now, these should all be reformatted, or not reformatted, but reset, so I should have to create the partition and everything. I hope. That's the way I should have put them away. Let me go back over to putting this in a corner. Oops, not that, Carey. Hold on. There. That. Move it up here, off to the side. Okay, now full screen on. HDMI input, rather. All right, there we go. Right-click, disk management. Should say, hey, there's a new drive attached. This long delay, that's worrisome. See, here's the thing that's killing me. We're lacking any consistency. It finally came up, but that was a long delay. Click OK. A device which does not exist. Yeah, I could tell something went right. So let's restart the computer, just in case something's lingering there from the plugs and unplugs. And speaking of which, I'll also unplug the NVMe drive, let that reset as well. And we'll bring this back up. We're going to run this one more time. I know all of these drives have passed all of my testing, and it's pretty rare to see a bad NVMe drive. The fact that the SilverStone unit is so particular, it's very strange. I don't think the P5 is a Gen 4, but you really should be using a Gen 3 in this. It's interesting that the phasing of Gen 4 works great, but you're really overbuying because it's still running at half its speed. The phasing is capable of going twice as fast, so why spend more for a faster drive that you can't utilize the performance on? Gen 3 will save you money big time. All right, let's plug this back in. Make sure both plugs are in good. See if we have any better luck. Right click, disk management. Okay, that came up much faster. Right click, new simple volume, next, next, next. Formatting. Oh, it's only a 500 gig drive. That came up really quick. That's a good sign. And we're going to go back to Crystal Disk Mark, and then we're going to go to 64-bit version. Close that window. We'll do both a read and write test. And select drive D. Here we go. Okay, let's see what this one will do. Not quite sure what the P5 performance numbers are. You guys can Google that to see what Crucial says it can do. But let's see what we're going to get. 2000. Okay, we know the controller, the enclosure, is capable of going faster than that. So by putting the Gen 4 drives in, we're overbuying. And by putting in a lower end Gen 3, we're underbuying. You can buy a cheaper enclosure if this is the kind of drive that, performance, that the kind of drive you're putting in there performs. Let's see what the writes look like, though, because the writes should be pretty close to the reads, somewhere in the ballpark. Yeah, okay. That seems much more realistic and expected. Typically, the write speeds will be a bit slower, but not like 3 digits. We're getting pretty darn close to that 2300 at 1800. So I'm going to say that Crucial P5 is performing as it should to the NVMe drive's capabilities, but not to the enclosure's abilities. So that's not a good pairing, but at least it works as it should. So let's eject it. It says it's safe to remove. Okay, let's pop this one out. And I'll put it up by the phasing because at least it's performing to its ability. Okay, and the phasing was performing to the enclosure's ability. See how this can get complicated, right? So on the Intel drive, this one is not a fast drive, but again, it's really known for more for reliability. So I'm going to plug the Intel drive in now, and I expect to see numbers a little better than the Crucial, but not a lot. But let's just see if we have any write speed issues. Plug that in. The blue light starts to blink inside of here. We should get some indication we plug something in on the screen. Right click, disk management. Should say, hey, there's a new drive. Yes, click OK. Right click, new simple volume, next, 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 and finish. Should format that. That's a 2 terabyte drive, by the way, that Intel I just put in there. And that formatted out pretty quick. Bigger drives take a little bit longer to format. That's why if it's taking longer than normal and it's not a very large drive, I know something's not right. Let's go back to Crystal Disk Mark one more time. And let's just do the top 2 numbers on drive D for both the read and write mix. Yep, here we go. Close that out. Once again, I think a drive like this is probably best suited for a less expensive enclosure, quite frankly. The whole point of getting an enclosure that can go 40 gig is that you're using a drive that can do in the mid 3000s on performance, which will be a higher end Gen 3, such as the Samsung. I do believe this Intel drive is underperforming. At 1300, we should be in the 2000s on this drive, so something's not right here either. And then we'll see what it does on the right side of things. I wouldn't be surprised if that right side number came out bigger. It's almost like the opposite is happening now. Let's see. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Wow, that's really, that is the worst we have ever seen. So whatever this issue is not related to just Samsung. And you know, look, these are reputable brands, Intel and Samsung. This is not at all correct. There's something seriously wrong here. Let's close that out and eject this drive. And we have one more to try. Let that cool off for just a moment. Again, they don't take very long to cool. But if you reach in there immediately, you could burn your skin. But that's still oftentimes not hot enough to cause a problem with the tech. You know, the tech can handle much higher heat than you can. So can your oven. All right, that's going to go in the bottom stack. So this is just another 970 Evo. Now the only other possibility is there something on the minis forum that's giving us grief on the USB4? So the alternative of testing that would be to find another non-minis forum PC with USB4 and check it. So that's possible. I mean, in theory, all USB4 implementations should be identical. There shouldn't be any differences. But let's right-click. Let's go back to disk management. Should detect a new drive. Okay. Again, it's 2 terabyte. Right-click, new simple volume. Every time you see me do that, it's like a brand new drive we're taking fresh out of the box. Look how fast that finished. That was good. Let's go back to Crystal Disk Mark. We'll run Disk Mark 64. And boy, things are just popping quick now. So does that mean I'm going to see faster speeds? Because it feels good. But what do the benchmarks say? $33.73 is exactly what I'm expecting to see. We're right in that mid 3000 range, that, you know, 3200, 3300. That's what I want to see. But I also want to see something in the near 3000s on the right side as well. Remember, writes will usually be a bit slower. So what's it going to do? Place your bets. Who knew tech videos could be so exciting? Are you right? What happened is what you thought was going to happen? It maintains the slower write speed. Now, if you recall, we did have an issue with the cables that came with the ZikeDrive, but we did not have an issue with the cables that came with the ORICO. What if we just changed the cable? Could it be that simple? Let's find out. So we're going to close this. We're going to eject Samsung. And we'll unplug, because you don't want to do this while it's plugged in. You don't want to change your drive out. We'll take the Samsung out and we'll stick it right down here with the rest of the Samsungs. They perform the same. We know it's not the drive. Something with the controller, or maybe something with this cable. Let's switch the cable. Oh, I probably shouldn't have taken that Samsung drive out. Let's put that Samsung drive right back where it was. So, without it plugged in. Little late for that now, Carey. That's okay. I think it's okay. Now let's plug it back in. Okay, the blue light is flashing. Now, since this is already formatted, we should see it in our Windows Explorer. Nothing's happening here. I got nothing. And all we've done is change the cable. Is that interesting? Okay, there we go. I might not have had the cable in all the way. Okay, that'd be a Carey issue. One more time, Crystal Disk Mark. Yes. Again, we're testing on drive D. I expect to see the 3000s. Yep. Will this make any difference at all? So for whatever it's worth, we changed the USB cable on the ZikeDrive to fix our issues. But in this case, it is not a USB cable related issue, because the same issue still exists and it's made no difference. It's quite interesting. So the only test that remains would be using a completely different computer to isolate the computer being the incompatible part of it. As I mentioned, all of USB4 should be the same. And if Miniswarm is building their machines with a certain chipset or driver that could be making it different, we'd want to go to a different manufacturer that has USB4. And I'm looking around to see what I have. I know we have some other mini PCs with USB4. Now, the Miniswarm, the MS01, which is what we were using before with the ORICO drive, that has Thunderbolt on it, but this doesn't say it requires Thunderbolt. In fact, there's nothing about Thunderbolt written on this at all. So going from one Miniswarm to another may not do anything but continue the same symptom. Really, the best test would be to go to a different manufacturer completely. And I know I have some others around here, but off the top of my head, I don't know what I've got that's USB4 that I can break out here real quick. So let me just put this away. That over there. Let's shut this down. And we'll go back over to camera 1 full screen. I love this little guy. That is like my favorite mini PC right now. I just wonder if Thunderbolt may make a difference. So prior to my new favorite, this was my favorite. Again, it's another Miniswarm. That's just They're just making them. What can I tell you? They're not paying me to say that. It's just how I feel. It's very responsive. It's quiet. It's powerful, little tiny package, and it's got lots of features, including on the back. We've got 2 SFP plus 10 gig ports, and then we've got a couple of Thunderbolt ports back here. And that's really what I'm in it for, is just to see if that Thunderbolt makes any difference. So we'll plug our keyboard back in. This also has more USB ports than the AIX one, but this thing is so responsive. All right, not that this one isn't, but by comparison. Let's get this plugged in. So I need a power cable. Oh, let's plug that bad boy in. This will be our last test for today, because anything beyond this would be unreasonable. In other words, if I was getting paid to do forensics on this, this would be, you know, we could do this for the next 2 weeks and just keep whittling down and whittling down. But what I will do is alert Silverstone to it. They might already be aware. We could even look online to see if there's an update to the enclosure, because the enclosure may have firmware as well. This probably hasn't been updated in some time though, so just bear that in mind. Let's turn this on. Plug this back in here. We're going to keep that Samsung drive in there. And we'll go over to our desktop. I guess I just need to put myself in the corner again, like so. And John says, if it's a Carey issue, look out. Yeah, nobody wants that. Arvale says the station driver's website has firmware updates for external NVMe drives. I don't know what station driver's website is. Okay, so our desktop is loaded here on the Minis forum, and I will need my Crystal Disk Crystal Disk Mark off my utilities flash drive. Let's move that over there. Let's see, let me go full screen over here so I can seize it. Let's grab PC testing, Crystal Disk Mark there. Drag that, whoops, drag it over. So, close that and eject that, because I don't want us to accidentally test the flash drive. Those numbers will be pathetic by comparison, although pretty impressive for a little flash drive. Okay, with that, let's plug this into the Thunderbolt port. Wow, that is a tight fit. Okay, that finally went in. Blue light is flashing. Drive opens as it should. Everything looks great. Crystal Disk Mark Portable, Disk Mark 64. We want to be on drive D. Oh, wait a minute. This thing has 4 drives. I guess it's drive F. That would be our flash drive. We'll see if the blue light starts blinking. Oh yeah, that's the right drive. Let me stop this because I just want to do the 2 top tests here. Ooh, that's not good at all. That's half speed. So that suggests we're running at 20 gigs instead of 40 gigs. But will that also relate to the same on the right side? That's what I'm really curious about. Okay, here we go. We should get a number. Yeah, that's pathetic. So I have no idea what's going on. I am stumped. However, let me look at Silverstone's website real quick here before we go much further. Let's do this. Full screen. Close out Crystal Disk Mark, and we'll bring up our browser. Let's type in Silverstone MS12-40G firmware. What does it say? I'm looking for file download, photos and manual. There is no firmware update for this. Okay, yeah. So what this means is that we have a product here that either something's wrong with it or the compatibility testing isn't finished. So by being able to provide Silverstone exact makes and models of drives and exact numbers, they should be able to easily replicate this symptom and be able to address that with a firmware update in theory, or tell us specifically if we're doing something incorrect. The important thing is that it's reproducible, and it's definitely easily reproducible. So at least we've got that going for it. Sometimes we won't always get to the solution in the same day, but we will always get to a solution. Remember I said that, because a lot of hobbyists and enthusiasts, what they'll do is they'll move on. They just dismiss it. They say it's the tech that's bad, or the technology that's bad. It's not me, it's them. I don't know yet. So I want to find out, because if it is me, there's an opportunity for me to learn and become better. If it isn't me, here's an opportunity for them to learn and become better. Let's not throw our fists in anger. Not yet. Now, if the company ignores you, or they don't respond, or their response is dismissive, then you can respond, with that sort of outrage. But this may be some oversight, either on my part, on their part, and we are still using Minisforum computers. I'd have to get another computer here, just one more, preferably made by somebody else that has USB4 on it. I know I've got some. At the top of my head, I just can't think of one right now. I can test that off camera, but I don't honestly think it's going to make a difference. It doesn't really matter what I think until it's tested. We don't know for sure. Lawn Dog said, so the file labeled as resolution photos, is that a bunch of pictures? Usually on website manufacturers, they have press images to be used in articles or online. So these are our press images of the product. Why they would be in the regular download section is unusual. They're usually, when you go to a website like anybody really of tech stuff, they'll have a press area. Like when you go all the way to the bottom of the page, it'll say if you're press, there's the press release, and there may be media. It may say things like, it's usually by press releases. And then they'll have product photos for you to use if you're writing an article or whatever. Okay, so if you go back to the downloads page where it said, so not taking me back, there's the 40G, and then scroll down a bit under file download. It doesn't say support, it just says download, right? And that may be where the difference is, because that would be downloads related to the product regardless of its support, which may include press images. My guess is what we're looking at here, I can only guess, are the press images. That's what I would expect. So let me get rid of camera one. Oh, did I already get rid of camera one? Okay, good. Then you can see the full screen. And we'll go full screen here. And now, Carey, come on. Try and make it full screen for me. Let's see what these are. Yeah, and then we can scroll through them. How do I scroll through? Spacebar, something. Why isn't that taking me to the next photo? Let's just do this. Let's do a right-click, view large icons, and that should show us the images. Oh, I've not extracted them, have I? That could be a problem. I need to extract them. We'll go to our downloads. Oh, looks like I've got Intel drivers here. Right-click, extract all. Now I should be able to scroll through them. Yeah, they'll press images. Exactly what it is. With the white background, you can overlay that, superimpose it, etc. It makes it real press friendly. Okay, that's what that was. Just what I thought. And back over to camera 1. And any other questions or anything I've missed, please repost back into the chat, because I've been pretty involved in all of this testing. I didn't expect this when we started. I've had really good luck with SilverStone. Didn't see this one coming. So bear in mind, Computex starts this week. Means all these manufacturers are all going to be busy. They'll all be traveling. They'll all be in Taipei this week, Monday through Thursday. In fact, you should start seeing YouTube videos from your favorite content creators who are doing that 17-hour flight, whatever it is for them. 17 hours one way for me. No, thank you. To go over to a very hot and humid and rainy place to what is the biggest convention, tech convention in Asia. It's huge. So I'm looking forward to seeing the content and very much looking forward to not going. But we should see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday videos coming from Computex. And I hope you appreciate the travel and the cost involved for all of your content creators that you watch, especially the smaller ones that are taking these expenses on themselves to follow their passion. And even if you don't like their content, you got to appreciate the effort. That's a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of jet lag just to turn around and come back home again a week later. So watch for that this week, but I do expect that there will be a delay in responses from these companies that will be presenting there, because they use half their staff in many cases to say, I need you to come over and do Computex this week. Leave your desk. In other words, they're not hiring people just for Computex. They're using employees they've got now, taking them off of their regular daily work to temporarily, have them for answering questions and showcasing their latest tech at the expo. Because of that, it's fair to expect a delay in response, or for those experts that you need to talk to, like I'm going to need to talk to, may not be available during this week. Fully understandable, and that's fine. What's not going to be acceptable would be just not getting back to me at all. It's just bad timing on my part to be testing this the day before this one annual event happens for a week there in Taipei. Okay, so just so you know what to expect, that's pretty universal for all the Asian manufacturers of tech to be involved in that. Why wouldn't they be? And when they report back to me, I'll let you know what they say when we'll do a follow. This definitely is going to need a follow-up. In the meantime, this is still my favorite, also made by SilverStone. Still my favorite, just saying. I would like this to become a favorite, but just because it has a SilverStone name on it doesn't get a pass. It's got to live up to the expectations that we have grown to expect from quality and value from SilverStone. And when it doesn't, I'm going to say as much. We don't use SilverStone liquid coolers. There's a reason for that. Not everything a company makes is just going to get the blessing. The reality is I have to run a business with reliable equipment. So I don't buy NZXT motherboards. I buy lots of other things from NZXT, not those. And the same goes with certain product categories. There are manufacturers that are leaders. SilverStone, it does seem like we do have a bit of hit and miss with some things. However, they've been a very good company, and overall, 75–80% of the stuff they build, I think, is a good solid value. The rest of it, like I say, we give them feedback. Hopefully they utilize that to improve the product, but we don't have any control over that. We just do our part. And if we agree to disagree on certain products, that's okay. We still like other products. But hopefully they'll acknowledge a firmware update, which is what I think is the issue here. But we'll see what the engineers who know way more than me about this have to say. Let me go back over to the chat. Let's see, what else do we have? Techno says the cable is detachable. I would try a different cable. So you're just joining us now and you're assuming we didn't already do that? Or have you been watching the whole time and not paying attention? Or have you just jumped into the end of a video making assumptions? That puzzles me on these live videos where people will make suggestions for things we've already done. And I'm like, hold on a minute, did they just show up? If so, please hold your suggestions, because it's very confusing for me that you're asking us to do something we very clearly already did. Wow, it's really bizarre. Let's see what else. Martin Hogg says, could you test using your retro high-spec PC that you built? I don't know that has USB 4. I think it's USB 3.2. I don't know, and I'd prefer not to have to put a big honking computer up here. I'd like to put another mini PC down. It's easier for me to move it and hook it up. So I'll look. I've got something around here that's a mini PC with USB 4 that's not made by Miniswarm. Maybe one of the Paladins or Geekoms or GMK Techs. I just have to find it, and it's just not, you know, this video is already 3.5 hours long, so we'll test. I'll figure it out off camera. And if need be, if I do have to put a desktop up here, I will, but I won't do that right now regardless. Amazing Airshow video says Computex already starts their keynote in 4 hours and 10 minutes. So that's because they're 12 hours ahead of us, right? So that's in Taipei right now, it's probably Monday morning, just FYI. Is it driver related to the USB chipset? Yeah, maybe. But again, we could literally be here for another 5 or 6 hours, and I'm not going to do that to myself, and I'm not going to do it to you. I will go through my normal routine. I mean, you guys guessing without any sort of evidence to back up your suggestions is muddying an already confusing thing for me. I have, as a professional, a routine of diagnostics that I use. So I'm not asking for you to guess. If you have any actual experience or knowledge of the issue, I would appreciate if you shared it with me. But please understand, I don't need your guesses. Anybody can guess anything without any skill level or experience. And all you're doing, in my opinion, is, well, your intent is to help. It's like you're putting your foot on top of my head as I'm drowning. It's not helpful. Your imagination is wonderful. And listen, I think it's great that we have such wild imaginations, but it's not appropriate in a professional field where, you know, there's a diagnostic procedure that needs to be followed, and those require certain tools. And until I put those tools in front of me and run it through my process, I do it my way. Also, none of this should even have to happen. If Silverstone's product works the way it should work, in my opinion, no further diagnostic tools or drivers should be required unless they are provided by Silverstone. So I'm not going to beat myself up over it, and I'm not asking for your suggestions. What I am asking for is, if you have any familiar knowledge about this particular symptom and its cure, then very much please share the link with me to where you're finding that resource. Otherwise, if you're just dreaming up imaginary scenarios, we can be here for the next week chasing nothing. So I can do that on my own. I don't need any help with imagination. I have a pretty wild one. So I appreciate the intent,
but it's having the opposite effect of flooding me with just conjecture and gossip when I'm more interested in factual evidence. So I either have to achieve that on my own, or we have to find a source, a reliable source. Otherwise, you're really making something much more difficult than it needs to be, in my opinion. Imagine all the computers I fixed in my life all by myself. Can you imagine? So imagination, I'm good with that. I'm good with solving my own issues. But when we're live on camera, if you have any questions that I can help answer for you, if you just want to throw out ideas, I mean, you're welcome to, but please understand, I cannot entertain that. It's too much. Because everybody's got their own theories, and I have my own. And until I work out my own, we'll see which ends up happening first. I'm either going to get a response from SilverStone before I'm done with my theories, or I'll be done with my theories waiting to go any further until I hear back from SilverStone. At no point do I need to necessarily go back and look at what other theories other people have, unless there's a justified link to evidence that that theory that I haven't come up with my own would make any sense for me to try. More than likely, people just guessing and throwing darts blindly at the wall. Sure, some people are going to hit a target once in a while, but boy, that's a really hard way to go about diagnosing things. So hopefully with some research, we might find some evidence of, we can't be the only ones having this issue. It's not a brand new product. It's been out for a while. So if this is a well-known issue, it should be documented online, along with a fix if a fix is available. Otherwise, SilverStone will provide us an answer. And in the meantime, off camera, I'll go through, my normal diagnostic routine, which will include, as I've already mentioned, grabbing a non-minis forum computer with USB4. I'm just not really thinking it's going to make any difference. But again, it's my own curiosity, not yours. It's mine. And I want to verify as much as I can that I don't go to SilverStone and for them to go, well, did you flip the switch on? Some stupid thing. Because that happens. And I want to do everything that I can to ensure that what I'm presenting to them is something that they can replicate before I even waste their time. I want to verify first. Okay. Dustin Fuller said, great stream as always, Carey and Mara. John says you fixed a lot of computers on here. Indeed. Think of how many I fixed before I started filming. So it doesn't mean I know everything. It just means that I have a way. Doug Betts has his way. Everybody's got their way of process. And that's what attracts me to the field, is there isn't necessarily one right way, only the right way for the individual who's held accountable and responsible for the work. There are times when it can be fun, especially when we have time to sort of entertain the guesses from the chat room. I'm sort of burned out. You know what I mean? Like, I've had enough. I'm throw a little sympathy at me, would you, to let me stop? Encourage me to stop instead of encouraging me to continue, because we've been going on now for 2 hours and 45 minutes on an enclosure, for crying out loud. It's a 30-minute test. So if you want to post suggestions in the comments, and maybe when I'm sort of reset and ready to get at it again, perhaps I'll entertain them. I don't think I will, only because unless you have a link that points to a reason why your imagination should be considered, I have my own imagination. I cannot stress that enough. But yes, when people provide me with actual factual evidence of, like, this is what solved it, I very much appreciate that. I do. Mondog says, personally, I don't know how you juggle doing everything and solving problems, explaining and giving us attention. Well, I'm also controlling the cameras and watching our connection and making sure my audio is going out. It is spinning a lot of plates. I appreciate that you get that. I do. It is a lot of juggling. So yeah, don't take anything I'm saying personally. I'm just trying to put you in my shoes. And I want you to just think about what's going on in my shoes right now. suggesting could be crystal disk mark. Pretty unlikely. But again, without testing it, it's possible. But I've never seen a situation in my career where the version of crystal disk mark made any difference. But there are different versions of crystal disk mark for a reason. I have no idea what the reason is because it always works the same. CPU-Z, there's always different versions, which I assume are just there to recognize the latest CPUs. So you don't have some new CPU that the old version of CPU-Z says, I don't know what it is. So I do try to keep the software I use up to date for that reason, just to ensure whatever the reason that it was updated, doesn't affect me. But it is the only test we're running. And again, that goes back to my experience with other benchmarks like ATTO. They always perform exactly the same. I've never seen a situation, anytime we've been doing these videos, where the benchmark itself, especially when measuring drive performance, was the issue. I've just never had that happen. So we go back to imagination again. But, until I actually test it, if there is no newer version of crystal disk mark, it wouldn't make sense to go backwards. That makes no sense at all. But yeah, I can double check and make sure there's not an update. I think 806 is the latest and it is what we're using. But again, I can do that off camera. And I can also run ATTO, which I normally wouldn't do because it always replicates exactly the same data every single time. Could it be different this time? It could. Is it likely? No. But again, if you have a link that provides evidence to an older version or a newer version of crystal disk mark being inaccurate, other than your imagination, I'd love to see where you're getting that, because I've never heard of that before. Robert says, no one should have to put this much effort into a product out of a box. Most users would not be able to navigate the remedy anyway, especially when you have a ticking return time. Well, 30 days isn't exactly ticking. But I agree with you. No, you shouldn't have to fix anything that's new. I'm 100% behind that statement. But 30 days is a long time. So if we have, for example, an incompatibility with a drive, and we're able to convey that to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer can respond to us with a firmware update in a week or two, we still have 2 more weeks to return it. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. You can immediately return it. No problem. If we take the same exact drive, just for example, if we take the same drive and you see how that's performing, and we use the ORICO enclosure. So the ORICO, I think, is even cheaper. And this is where we're going to end the video, just to make a point that more or less is underscoring what Robert Matthews just said. If we go to, let's go back to this machine here for a second. And let's click on, where's my mouse? Right here. Let's go to Amazon. Come on, mouse. Screensaver makes the mouse hard to find. Not screensaver, moving wallpaper. There it is. Oh boy, got an update. Let's celebrate. Go to Amazon. Enter the characters you see below. Okay. And let's look for the ORICO 40 gig. I don't know. That should be good enough. I think that's us right here, isn't it? This is us right here. This is half the price of the SilverStone. Just to show you they're not, blindly going to give SilverStone a pass on things. I'm going to call them up the same as anybody else. So for half the price, now this thing is made of plastic. It's not all metal, so the cost of manufacturing it is going to be less than SilverStone's. However, let me go back to camera 1 again. This also has an active cooling fan. You just slide the lid off. There is no tool required. That's better than SilverStone. If we unplug this drive, and I realize I'm not disconnecting it, but at this point, I'm so frustrated I don't even care anymore. So you'll notice when the frustration gets there, we start getting a little sloppy, right? We start caring less about Well, all you need to have is a couple of children. How you treat that first child growing up is very different than the second and third one. By the time you get to child number 4, something falls on the floor, pacifier, you stick it back in the kid's mouth. You don't even rinse it off. The first child, that thing will get boiled before it goes back into the kid's mouth. So let's put this in here. Now, not that this is perfect either, because I don't like the way that this secures down, where they have this little thing here that turns. And what I've learned is you've got to put it on the drive first. So put that there. Then install the drive. And then lower that down, and it should seat. Oops. I need my glasses. Can't see so good without my glasses. All right, let's try that again. It's got to go on with this up and down. Okay, so just like that into its groove. It's a convoluted way to mount a drive. Should come on now. It's a hard piece of plastic. It's not rubber, so it doesn't bend like the other one. So that means our installation process. I suppose if I did this a bunch more, I'd probably get really good at it, but I always struggle with this. This is its Achilles heel. Now I rotate that and it locks the drive in. There's all my thermal tape and stuff. We don't have to put the lid on it, but it's not discouraging to do so because there's no screws involved. That just slides on. And then I will grab the enclosed cable, which comes with a USB Type-A adapter. We do not get a Type-A adapter there. We'll plug it in here, and I'll come around the back and plug it into the same place that I have the SilverStone and the same drive that we saw those numbers on. You'll see this fan starts to spin, and there is a blue light that blinks much more noticeably on the SilverStone. Now, let's get back over to HDMI 3 right there. That's our drive, okay? I'm going to leave me off screen right now so you can see the entire screen and everything I'm doing. Go back to Crystal Disk Mark Portable. 64, yes. And we're on drive F, and let's just do those 2 tests one more time. We're going to look for any consistency here. This is a 2 terabyte. This is the 970 Evo Plus, 2 terabyte. Okay, right now we're already at twice the speed than we were with the SilverStone in the same computer in the same port. What do you think we're going to get on our write speeds? You think we're going to see low write speeds, or do you think we're going to be up in several thousand, closer to the read? Same drive, same computer, same test. All that's changed is the enclosure. And an enclosure that's half the price. Something is very bizarre. That's all I can tell you. It's weird. Did that do what you think it was going to do? Because it was not, see, I didn't see that coming at all. That is freaking bizarre. Okay. Wow. I don't know what to say. I really thought that that was going to show us proper performance on both sides. But it was kind of in the middle, wasn't it? Because that drive in the, you know what? Just for grids, one more thing. I swear this is how we're going to be here 6 hours. Like Columbo. I just got one more thing I want to ask you here. Let's go back one more time. Let's turn this off for a second. Let me go full screen for me. Turn this off. And let's disconnect us from, yeah, safely eject. Yeah, the ORICO also shows the drive itself rather than the enclosure. It's very strange. Okay, so now, just for grins, just for the sake of comparison, let's take the TS16, which is several years old, my favorite one, but I don't really care so much about the exact performance. I'm using it for recoveries and clones. You know, I'm not measuring to get the latest and greatest performance out of it. I'm just looking to get a job done in a reasonable period of time, and you know, I'm not sitting there watching water boil. So let's take the drive out. That back so I don't lose it. That's the other thing about these things. You drop them and lose them. They do give you one spare one. But I like that it's truly toolless. So there's things I like better about this one. And there's things I like better, well, on this one. Now this is not Gen 4, right? So I want you to keep that in mind. We're going to put the same drive right back in here. We have that little rubber stopper thing that SilverStone likes to use, which is fine. I don't have any issues with it. You don't see me struggle. We have a regular USB Type-A. We're going to go into a USB 3 port now instead of USB 4. But otherwise, it's the same 970 EVO Plus. Now, there's variations of USB 3, the highest of which will go 20 gig per second with Gen 2 by 2. But if it's just Gen 2 without the by 2, we're going to be at 10 gigabits, which is 1,000 megabytes per second. Let's see what happens. Let's go back over to camera. Let's go back over to the desktop. This is our final test today because I am dying. I need to eat something. And mentally, I'm pretty well ready to be put back on the charger. Okay, let's go to the... Oh, it's not even appearing? Oh, okay. So the reason that's happening is this has a power button. You see how it's red down there? I don't know if you can see that. When I hit the power button, that turns it on. That's a feature I really like about this. There is no top. This is the whole thing. This is the way it's made. It's not meant to be a full-time, always-on enclosure. It's meant to do a job, take the drive out, or to plug it in and use it and unplug it. There's no cooling fan on it, etc. All right, so understand that. That's why I really like it. What you may see as something bad, I see as something good. Now, that shows up as it should as an empty drive that it's now seeing as drive F. Oh, look, it got updates. Great. Let's just not do that right now. I have to restart this to see drive F. Drive F. There we go. It will just do the sequential read and write speeds one more time. I expect to see 1,000 on both sides, guys. I expect that write speed to be faster than any write speed we've seen so far on this drive from the other expensive enclosures. But we do see the read speed significantly reduced because of the limitation of USB 3.2, which is 10 gigs. So you'll see here that says sequential read 5 of 5. Now it's going to take a break for a second and let the buffers clear. It waits 5 seconds for that interval, and then it will start the sequential, which it prepares. And after it's prepared, it will benchmark. Here we go with benchmark 1 of 5, and it'll give us the best of 5. And I expect to see, yeah, that's a faster write speed than either of the two fancier, more expensive enclosures. So slower is faster. I mean, it's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. I do hope the information is useful to Silverstone because I want to root for Silverstone. I like them. I like the people who work there, and I like the vast majority of their products. When a product falls short, I hope they accept this information as very useful to be able to replicate the issue and find a solution for us to make their product more valuable and to make it my choice. Until then, I think it's pretty obvious it's not my choice, and I'd be surprised if it were yours given these test results with 7 different NVMe drives. The only one that worked well, oddly enough, was the Beijing drive, a brand that most of you never heard of unless you're regular channels, and I've been singing their praises now for a couple of years. But every once in a while, we still get somebody in the comments who's never heard of them and just make the false assumption that this drive is unreliable because it's a no-name Chinese brand, without even investigating what controller and NAND chips that are soldered onto this board. Because boy, are they going to feel like a fool when they realize what they're saying they like versus what they don't like are essentially made from exactly the same parts, maybe even at the same factory. So, don't be that guy. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. And, I didn't expect it to go this long, but, I'm good with it, is what it is. Let's see. Skull's playlist says StarTech makes a force. Yeah, so StarTech and Silverstone, they're kind of like very similar companies like Coke and Pepsi in a way. I like a lot of the StarTech stuff too, but I don't have any connection at StarTech. I do have a connection at Silverstone. But yeah, if I need to go buy one at Amazon for testing, I will. They're not that expensive. M. Cochran says, jolly good show. Right, pip pip. Stiff up a lip. What else do they say? Stay calm and carry on. Thank you, M. Cochran. And did I miss anything else in the chat while I've been focused? Thank you to Martin Hogg for the £4.99 super chat. Thank you, Michael MacArthur, who's now a member for 36 months. Our good friend Mark Gaines, like I said, reach out in our forums. Hopefully we can help you out with your backup issue. Jose Lopez, and welcome into Abad Alazem. I really don't know how to say Abad's last name, but I don't mean any offense by that. Welcome in. Is it actually Abed? Abed, who's now been a supporter. Well, apparently they let their subscription expire and came back, because while it tells me they're a new member, it also says they've got a 6 next to their name. So they must have been a member. The YouTube membership numbers can get a little confusing for me. So welcome back to Abed. All right. I think I got that all straightened out now. Now's the time to really play with me when my brain is frazzled. I don't think I've missed anything in email, but let me just check. I think everything's nice and quiet. It's a great way to have a nice Sunday afternoon with a fun little challenge here. I thought it was going to be a lot easier than this. That's all right. I enjoyed it, even if I'm a little frustrated. It's enough where it's still enjoyable. And we'll get to an answer, I promise you, but it might take a few days with Computex. Look forward to the Computex content and, of course, our reaction to some of it as we get the news throughout this week. And enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and it's back to the grind tomorrow. We have our members-only video tomorrow at 1 o'clock, as we always do, 1 o'clock Phoenix time. So if you're a member here, we hope to see you tomorrow in the chat. Those videos are only made available for members. They're never made to the public, and it's just a way of me showing gratitude back to the members who make these videos possible. Well, we did get the enclosure from Silverstone for free. We did not get any of these drives for free. That's all part of our inventory that is all financed and underwritten by our members, super chats, and community members who contribute. But at the same time, just being in the community and enjoying each other's company, sharing your stories and having friends that you make here, I think that's also considered a contribution. And I appreciate each and every one of you who have decided to become a part of this community. And those of you who haven't, it's your own punishment, because you're missing out on the best, largest community in tech, as far as I can tell, that exists online. No other community is this friendly and welcoming. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, your race, your gender, your religion. None of that matters here. Just be nice, and you're going to make some friends that can last a lifetime. And it all starts with jumping into our live chat and saying hello. That's all you have to do. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thanks to Mara, of course, who's in the background doing all the administrative work, our video notes, our thumbnails. She'll be the one reaching out to Silverstone, giving them screenshots, directing them to the video while I'm focusing on other content for the week. So, you know, hats off to her for being able to take on that responsibility so I can focus on others. And then we'll follow up with you when we hear back. If you want to reach out to the channel, as a reminder, those emails also are something that Mara handles. So if you reach out to the email address here on the screen, anything that requires my attention, she will bring to my attention, but most of it she can handle and does so much better than I do. And what else? Our friends over at SCD Keys, when you want a Windows or an Office license key, they are offering you guys 30% off their already low prices. I don't make a commission on this. So if you want to take advantage of the low price or you don't, I'm just putting it out there, okay? Trying to look out for you. That's it. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thanks to everyone for hanging out. Thanks to Silverstone for sending us the unit and allowing us to test it. And future thanks for helping us resolve or identify what's going on, because I'm sure we're going to get an answer to it. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Bye for now.